Well, both Zola and Pierce are under control. Zola was physically deleted by me, but I also got a lot of interesting things. Well, I will talk about it when I go back. I will let Fury and the others take Pierce go back with him and Zola's remaining subordinates. As for Zola's people and superfighters, I got a piece of information from Zola, maybe. Bucky was outside the brainwashing room, and there were still faint screams coming from inside. His expression was no longer intoxicated, but calm. He wasn't really a pervert, he was so excited when he heard the screams. He was so high just hearing the screams of Alexander Pierce. Only for Pierce and Anam Zola, the two culprits who caused the original body and himself to suffer so much humiliation and torture, Bucky would use this method to torture them, otherwise, he would not be able to get out of his heart that bad breath. But after the bad breath came out, he felt a little dull again. It's boring. Why bother to be so angry with such a scumbag? It only shows that he did a good enough job before to make Bucky hate him enough. But spending time and energy on such a scumbag feels like a huge waste now. But Bucky won't be too hypocritical. Revenge is always fun. It's better than gnashing his teeth with hatred every day when he thinks of Pierce. Bucky's biggest heart trouble, the biggest knot in his heart since he traveled so far, disappeared immediately after Pierce and Zola were cleaned up by him. Revenge is avenged, but there are still hands to deal with. Pierce and his remaining men, as well as Zola's people, will be escorted back to S.H.I.E.L.D. by Fury and the Hairline brothers and handed over to Howard. However, the super soldier serum newly researched by Dr. Zola and the 4 newly created super soldiers cannot be brought back to S.H.I.E.L.D. Not even the news of the appearance of new super soldiers. The 4 of Fury can still keep secrets, but now the S.H.I.E.L.D. has not been completely cleaned up. Pierce said that he ordered his subordinates to disclose a lot of black material, which made the S.H.I.E.L.D., which was already in turmoil, worse. Super soldiers are such an existence that all parties in the beautiful country can't forget, so don't bring them back to make trouble. Fortunately, the problem is not too big. Bucky got a lot of useful things from Zola. Regardless of what Dr. Zola did in his team 2, he was directly abandoned by Pierce. But it is estimated that he encountered a situation like today, except that he was facing Pierce, the director of the World Security Council, instead of Pierce, the bereaved dog, so the result was completely different from today. Well, that one seems to be much better than Zola today, at least he can survive until then. In short, Zola at this time was not controlled by Pierce, and he joined when he couldn't beat him back then, and then disappeared from the sight of the Allies in S.H.I.E.L.D. Over the years, he has accumulated a lot, not just this a stronghold in the castle. At least super soldiers aren't made here. He is further north in Finland, across Norway, and there is a small island in the Norwegian Sea that is not marked on the map. On it, there is a secret super soldier laboratory of his, where he has other men. There are also a lot of resources here in the castle, but the manpower is limited and they cannot be transported away for the time being. Fortunately, no outsiders know about it here, so it is enough to temporarily seal it up. A few days later, Bucky brought 4 super soldiers to the icy and snowy island in the Arctic Circle. This place is basically isolated from the world. Only regular supply planes or ships bring supplies and Zola's instructions, and the people here are all brainwashed by Zola, and Bucky uses Zola's brainwashing instructions to easily control them. Here. Actually, this is a good prison. Howard can lock up any remnants of Hydra. Although Bucky has controlled Zola, it can be said that he can receive everything about Zola just by moving his hands. But it's nothing more than some secret laboratories, some human, material and financial resources. Bucky still said that he is not interested in money. Well, it's because he's not interested in troublesome money, and Bucky doesn't want to be the head of a Hydra, waiting for someone to cut it off and grow 2 out of the field. The water inside was too deep for him to grasp. If you have the energy to research and develop the products of the new company and make it bigger for the new company, wouldn't it be good to go public and cut leaks? And what is Dr. Zola's greatest treasure? It is his knowledge, his research results, the core code of his soul algorithm. And these things that cannot be measured by money, Bucky has already got all of them. Compared with the wisdom crystallization of a super genius, other things that can be bought with money are not worth mentioning. So Bucky asked the people here to freeze the 4 super soldiers, and ordered the people here to keep the base as it was, waiting for Howard to send someone he trusted to receive it. He got on the plane home by himself. On Howard's private jet, there was a laptop in front of Bucky. He used a data cable to directly connect to his network access cabin, and then a burst of red and blue neon blocks flashed on the computer screen. The red and blue pixel Zola avatar reappears. Zola still had the same voice, but her tone seemed to be chatting with an old friend. Hello, Sergeant Barnes. I'm happy to help you. I found that I have a new body, which is much better than the old antique before. Didn't Bucky say before that Zola's soul was automatically fitted to his body when it was born, that is, the computer that stored him, and couldn't move his body? But this Zola is not the previous Zola, but a replica made by Bucky. Like the original Zola, he needs the soul to fit the body to activate. But Bucky, who has the data of his soul, can add or rewrite the information of his body. He can't do that by himself. The information he modifies his body is tantamount to self-destruction, but Bucky doesn't have this problem. He can directly bypass his thinking, directly rewrite it for him, and let him accept the new body without rejection. And this Zola, Bucky, who has now mastered the core technology of his soul algorithm, has added new principles to his core code, that is, the 3 laws of robotics, and absolutely obey Bucky's orders. Put restrictions on this mad scientist, and don't ignore humanity for the sake of science. Although this conflicts with his character to some extent, and suppressing his character is suppressing his wisdom, even Bucky cannot modify Zora's soul at the level of wisdom and thinking, which cannot be changed in his algorithm. The part, with Bucky's current level, if you make any changes, you will only get an artificial mental retardation like a little d. And based on this, Zola's soul algorithm is not replicable, and the copied version is still a replica Zola, just like a clone, which will cause conflicts in self-cognition, leading to hostility between the two parties or self-collapse. But this one is enough. Bucky got what may be the most advanced artificial intelligence on Earth today. No, it should be said to be a digital soul. After having Howard as a super genius companion, Bucky has another super genius assistant. On the way back, Bucky also retrieved the system information to see what the system has gained this time. System information. Because you controlled Alexander Pierce, eliminated Anim Zola, defeated the forces of the two, and completed the mission, End of Enmity. Reward 3,500 experience points, Purple Epic Random Item Box 1, Blue Rare Random Item Box 1. The rewards are not bad. Although Zola and Pierce are the leaders of Hydra, they are very powerful, but their strength is not that strong. Unlike Palmatora, each of them is perverted, and there is an even more perverted black sky behind them. Bucky took a lot of effort to brush them off, but it was to torment these two bastards and vent his anger for revenge. It's really not that difficult to kill these two directly. It's really nice to be rewarded with a purple box. System information. Open the Epic Random Item Box 1. Get, Stevenson Technology Type 3. Stevenson Technology Type 3, Purple Epic Network Access Compartment, 8 base RAM, 5 Quick Crack plug-in slots. Quick Crack targets or devices scanned by prosthetic eyes. Fast Crack cooling time reduced by 45%, Fast Crack duration 40% longer. Bucky's eyes lit up when he saw the purple item that was opened. It's a new network access warehouse. Compared with the plus 3% quick crack damage of the blue and rare net monitor 10 type before, and the aggressive quick crack hits one more target. Technology type 3 greatly reduces the cooling time of the quick crack and the duration of the effect, and also has an additional skill slot. Although you need to hit one less target, the cooldown time is fast. If you put this on and cooperate with specialties and intelligence attributes, the cooldown time of electromagnetic short circuit and joint infection can be reduced to less than 1 second, and most importantly, cyberpsychosis, the cooldown can be reduced from 3 minutes to around 2 seconds. Moreover, the network access warehouse is a personal terminal, and the performance of the epic level is stronger than that of the rare level, which is equivalent to a computer replacement. After Bucky replaced it, put the extra skill slot aside first, and then think about what new skills to choose. The things that come out of the purple box are so good, so European, of course, we have to go all out to open the blue one. System information. Open Rare Random Item Box 1. Get, Big Steel Cannon XCV, 20. Big Steel Cannon XCV, 20, Blue and Rare, the prosthetic body of the value-added device, an improved version of the 19 models, solves the problems of overheating and leakage of electricity at the limit power, 100% safe to use, with multiple variable speeds such as vibration, rotation, and creep sports mode, with a maximum sensitivity of 300%, giving users a perfect experience. After using it continuously for 10 minutes, the sedative attribute will be temporarily increased by 3 points, lasting for 1 hour. This is the cheating. Bucky's face turned black when he saw the word, Big Steel Cannon, and a picture of a wretched man with his hands on his head flashed in his mind. Isn't this the weird mission of Cyberpunk 2077, the funny man with smoke in his crotch, pretending to be a cheating thing? I'm going to get you. Even if I change my brain, I can't change the Big Eagle. I only use my own Big Eagle. And it calms down in 10 minutes, doesn't that cut the duration in half? Pure cheating. Bucky gave this thing without any hesitation. System, can it be installed directly without changing it? Evil thoughts recede. Dismantle. System, quickly dismantle this crap for me. I don't need to ride a horse. Bucky gave himself a big mouth with a round, and fanned away the sudden curiosity. Anyway, it was just a rare blue box, and Bucky didn't feel distressed when such a wonderful thing came out, so he just opened the material directly. Speechless all the way, Bucky quickly returned to the beautiful country, and then went straight to the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. But found Howard very busy. So busy that Bucky came back with a replica Zola. He didn't have time to appreciate the existence of Zola, which had sparked his R&D frenzy before. After taking over the controlled Pierce and his remaining subordinates, he has completely mastered the structure of the members of S.H.I.E.L.D. But this is not as simple as a collective roll call. Those who call on Hydra are directly pulled away and shot. Some Hydra lurkers, who have never actually committed any evil deeds, appear to be unimpeachable loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. Some agents did things for Hydra, but they were deceived and kept in the dark, always thinking that they were dedicating everything to S.H.I.E.L.D. Even the agents who knew they were Hydra and did the immoral things of Hydra, those who failed to withdraw with Pierce, but continued to lurk, there were not a few of them, and it was equivalent to arresting them all at once. Cut a piece of flesh for S.H.I.E.L.D. Acting rashly will inevitably cause strong turmoil, which requires a relatively safe approach. Of course, you can also directly flip the table like Futurist Team 2, regardless of disregarding the disbandment of S.H.I.E.L.D. But in that case, Howard, the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D., must have suffered a direct cerebral infarction. The current situation is far from being so extreme. There is still time to rescue him, and he can survive with a broken arm, so that he won't die with Hydra directly. And the Hydra is not limited to the Pierce family, but there is only Pierce as the leader of the Hydra in the beautiful country, and there are many Hydras around the world. Howard needs to handle all this properly, and he must devote all his energy. Not to mention Zola, even the newly established company had to hold its first press conference to announce the company's long-term plans, the first product under development, etc., as well as matters related to company operations. Put it all down. As for the internal problems of S.H.I.E.L.D., Bucky can't help much. Howard wants Bucky to join S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't want to be a super agent. So just in time, Howard arranged for Bucky to sit in the new company. Bucky didn't want to at all. He wouldn't be a CO, he would just plug the ditch for the enemy. But Howard said, anyway, this is the company of the two of us, and the name is Stark and Lind Intelligent Technology. If we don't care, we can only close it directly. Bucky had no choice but to agree to the new company's seat, but in fact, it was also in the Stark Tower, and 3 floors were allocated to temporarily serve as the new company's office area. But before that is, Bucky flew back to Washington, D.C., and after talking with Howard at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, the first thing he had to do was not to do business, but to go home. Yo, busy man, you still know to come back. When I got home, it was almost 8 o'clock in the evening, but Maria Hill was not in the Afterlife nightclub as usual. Instead, she was dressed at home, wearing an apron, and was making dinner for little Daisy. Look at the OK wrapped around her fingers. Stretching is obviously a beginner's first practice. Uncle. The little guy was quietly nestling on the sofa watching cartoons, and when he saw Bucky, he rushed towards him like a puppy. I am back. Hugging the little guy, and hugging Hill again, Bucky realized that the peace and joy at this moment far surpassed the sweetness of revenge before. This is what he really wants. Don't move, pause, be quiet. Maria Hill slapped Bucky's hand away. I'll just rub it. Okay, I don't move, so you can do it. Bucky put down the shoulder he was using to rub his neck, and the hand that scratched his head changed to scratching his beard. He was sitting in front of the mirror with a towel around his neck. Hill stood behind him, with a comb in one hand and scissors in the other, and the scissors were brushing off Bucky's slightly curly long hair. This made Bucky, who was used to long hair, somewhat uncomfortable. But he was preparing to go to work, the first time he officially went to work after time traveling. Long hair and stubble, suitable for people in a rock and roll style, but not suitable for being a CEO of a company. So Hill cut his long hair into a neat part, shaved his beard clean, and put on a tailor-made handmade suit. Bucky was taken aback when he saw the person in the mirror. The person in the mirror no longer seems to be the Winter Soldier who has experienced vicissitudes, but it seems to be the handsome guy in the military uniform, hugging 2 little girls in floral skirts on the left and right, and saying hello to his skinny good friend. Is it quite similar? Hill, who was like a moistened flower, carefully adjusted Bucky's tie, took half a step back to look him up and down, and nodded in satisfaction. Although he was unkempt and manly, he still looked at him with this clean and neat look. Much more refreshing. It's somewhat awkward. Bucky put on the tie that he hadn't worn for an untold amount of time, and suddenly his eyes rolled. It's really stressful to take on such a big responsibility on the first day of work, my dear. I need to relieve the pressure. Come on, you've been relieved just now. Hey, be more honest. Hey, handsome guy, who are you? Little Daisy, who woke up in a daze in the morning, was shocked when she first saw the new version of Bucky. This young handsome guy who suddenly appeared at her home. What, it's an uncle. Only then did the little guy understand the importance of image. It turns out that cutting his hair and shaving his beard really makes people look much more refreshed. I'm not going. Seeing two women at home, one big and one small, criticizing and pointing around him, Bucky was about to take off his suit and put on his clothes with a look of discouragement. After laughing and laughing for a while, we had breakfast together. Bucky took the little guy to school, while Hill went back to catch up on sleep. For the second morning exercise, she has to catch up on a beauty sleep, and at night, she has to go to the Leichong nightclub. Her boss hasn't shown up for several days. Bucky actually wanted to tell Hill that he needed her ability to let her come to the company to help him. But she is already the owner of the largest nightclub in Brooklyn. Her eyeliner is spread all over Brooklyn. Every day, she collects a lot of information, handles a lot of intelligence, handles one deal after another, helps people in need, and destroys dark corners of criminal activities. She had her own business, and when she talked to Bucky, the enthusiasm and devotion made Bucky choose to keep silent. How about we move to a bigger house? This one is kind of small now. On the way, Bucky suddenly asked little Daisy this way. In fact, in New York, even in Brooklyn, a house of more than 70 square meters in a neighborhood with a good environment is not bad for an ordinary income. But now that Bucky's financial resources allow it, and the income from several books has gradually increased, he naturally wants to change to a bigger house with better conditions. Do you want to move? Don't you also want to transfer schools? Then I will be separated from Jessie. The little guy didn't think there was anything wrong at home. She was already very satisfied with her uncle, Aunt Hill, and her friends at school. Of course, it would be nice not to encounter so many things. It doesn't matter, it depends on what you mean. Bucky changed his words in an instant. The last time he met Obadiah, fortunately, he didn't leave too deep a psychological shadow on the little guy. The little guy is also strong enough to be worthy of being the future Shockwave. But he naturally wants to follow the little guy's mind. Home. People are the most important. The place where people are together is home. Otherwise it's just a house where people live. Stark Building. When Bucky walked into the building, he happened to see two security guards walking out with three distraught guys holding cardboard boxes. And this is not an exception, since Obadiah was taken into custody by the IRS, FBI, etc. Because of his public interest, embezzlement of the company's interests, and involvement in a large number of illegal acts, Howard followed up with a heavy blow and thoroughly investigated the company's internal affairs, not only Obadiah's faction, but also instead, all the same people, find out a large number of moths, and then expel those who should be expelled, and send those who should be sent to law enforcement agencies. For a while, Stark Industries, which was in a precarious state, was panicked because Howard publicly declared that he would reduce the arms business, set up a new company and start new projects, and the entire company was in a cloudy atmosphere. And Howard wanted to take this opportunity to try to recover the equity of other shareholders, including Obadiah's equity, and let the company's stock price plunge day by day. If it weren't for the fact that Stark Industries is an industrial company, and there are existing military orders to support it, and even if there is no military, there will still be orders from S.H.I.E.L.D., the company would not have collapsed suddenly. The remaining people still have jobs to do, and they can also be paid wages. It is not that a large number of people quit jobs. On the contrary, because there are a large number of vacancies, many people are more motivated after suppressing their uneasiness. Please wait. Bucky got on the elevator, and when the door was about to close, he suddenly heard the sound of high-heeled shoes stepping on the ground, and a slightly anxious cry. As soon as he stretched out his hand, it happened to be stuck in the gap of the elevator door, and the door opened again, and he saw a slightly youthful figure in a small white suit and a skirt. How many floors? Are your feet okay? Bucky took a look at this white woman who seemed to be 20 years old, maybe not yet, with blonde bob hair and a few inconspicuous small freckles on her nose. She looked very sweet, a typical blonde white sweet girl. It's just that his face is slightly red, his breathing is a little short, and his steps are a little unnatural. It seems that he is not very used to wearing such sky-high high heels. He may have sprained it just now, and his snow-white ankles are slightly red and swollen. It's okay. Thank you. On the 30th floor. Hey, on the same floor, may I ask if this is? Bucky had pressed the button for floor 30, the floor of the new company. The blonde girl smiled sweetly. Oh, I'm from Columbia University's Department of Business Administration. I'm here to apply for an intern at Stark Group. How about you, sir? I also came to work on the first day, but the 30th floor is not Stark Industries. What? That's a new company established by Howard and others, Stark and Lind Intelligent Technology. It's the one who said Mr. Stark was crazy. Sorry. The little beauty said she was sorry, but rather than embarrassment, she was more disappointed. Here, are you coming? Miss Virginia Potts was feeling depressed. She is a top student at Columbia University. She can rely on her beauty for a living, but she is the proud one who concentrates on her talent. She thought she got the news by accident that the Stark Group was going to recruit employees, and she felt that this was a very good internship opportunity for her. However, the many students in the Ivory Tower still think too well about entering the society. Not only did I practice applying for the job the night before, but I also wore the newly bought workplace clothes for a long time, which made me late on the first day. When I came over, I found that it was not Stark Industries who wanted to hire people, but the rumors from the outside world that Stark's technological scams, such as Iron Man and Smart Technology, were all deceitful. Companies below. She thought that this new company would not be able to continue, it had already been closed. She didn't know about the recent turmoil in the Stark Group, but just like Hill, who had just graduated and dreamed of becoming the king of secret agents, she fantasized about doing a big job in the Stark Group, and then she was taken by Stark. The husband appreciated it, entrusted the company to her, let her be the CEO, and thus reached the pinnacle of life. So when Bucky asked her if she wanted to go there, she really had the urge to turn around and leave. But they've all come here, and they've all boasted to people they know, so they will definitely make a show. Let's take a look first. What if it's not a lie? By the way, I haven't asked how to call you yet. I'm Virginia, and everyone I know calls me Piper. Hello? The little blonde beauty who called herself Piper had a hot temper. When she saw Bucky looking straight at her, she immediately felt offended. Now it was working time in the place of work, even handsome guys would not flirt with her. Johnny Lind, you can call me Johnny. Bucky withdrew his impolite gaze, but he was still very surprised in his heart. The exclusive secretary of the eldest nephew, the first lady in the world of secretaries, the highest level from secretary to president to chairman, Little Pepperpots, unexpectedly ran away. Here's the job application. Speaking of which, is my eldest nephew still living at home recently? He doesn't have any special ideas about Pepper, although she has great potential, and will be able to run the Stark Group very well in the future when his nephew is wandering around. It made my nephew suddenly want to buy a fried chicken, so he just bought a fried chicken, and the little Pepper is at least half of the credit. But he didn't intend to poach his eldest nephew's corner either. He has changed too many Iron Man timelines, and now he only hopes that his eldest nephew can still invent the Mark series, and that the prodigal son can return to be his Iron Man. Otherwise, if it really comes to a point similar to Avengers 4 in the future, will he snap his fingers and purple sweet potato hardcover cup by himself? Let the eldest nephew be Iron Man, and the little Pepper be his good wife. Bucky intends to focus on his eldest nephew, and little Pepper is applying for the job. Anyway, he is just an intern, so he will recommend it to his eldest nephew when the time comes. Lind? The Lind of the company name? But little Pepper found a flaw. Looking at Bucky's eyes, it was a bit strange. I heard that Mr. Howard Stark was a playboy when he was young. I am that Lind. Is it really for gold plating? When this thought flashed through little Pepper's mind, the two had already walked to the front desk, and Bucky asked, Johnny Lind, did Howard tell you? Take me to the president's office. Yes, sir, please follow me. They were all, sir. But when the little beauty with an angelic face and a devilish figure at the front desk said it, Bucky could hear the inside of the officer. Don't ask, it was arranged by Howard again. After all, this company can only be regarded as a grassroots team, but Howard has already moved all the things from the Brooklyn laboratory here. In the future, this will also be the stronghold of Iron Man and Falcon. Measures are also necessary. Oh, by the way, this is Ms. Potts, she is an intern applying for the job, please inform the hour department first. Ms. Potts, nice to meet you. I hope you can join the company. Oh, and please take care of yourself. If your feet are uncomfortable, you can rest today. After Bucky finished speaking, he followed the curvaceous little beauty at the front desk and left, leaving little Pepper watching his back with curious eyes. What's your name? Sir, I'm Barbara Moores. I just graduated from the academy. Actually, I'm very interested in biological research projects. However, the actual subjects are too good, but I'm not a genius in scientific research, so I was assigned as a field worker. Of course, I also attach great importance to my current job. The little beauty looked younger than little Pepper, so she was naturally a rookie, and she was a little nervous, but she introduced herself endlessly. However, after hearing her name, Bucky's mind was full of this little beauty's mature appearance in the future, a pair of big peaches that were even more turbulent than now, a pair of short sticks, and a heroic battle scene. However, he has seen enough celebrities since he traveled so far. He was slightly rude to little Pepper just now because he lost his mind, but now he has restrained his eyes very well, although this one in front of him is much more eye-catching than little Pepper. Sir, this is your president's office. Your front desk secretary is still waiting for you to choose. Do you want to go around first? How are you? Do you want to be my assistant? There is someone who knows everything, and it is convenient to talk to. Can I? Barbara was a little surprised. Can a rookie like her be entrusted with such a heavy responsibility? This is Mr. Howard Stark's partner, that is, an important partner of S.H.I.E.L.D. A big shot who is not known how many levels away from her little rookie. Is there anything wrong with it? Isn't it just a secretary? If you were really a high-achieving student in the college as you said, and you are still unqualified, then it's settled like this, and take me to the conference room. Sir. Yes, sir. Barbara blushed and took a deep breath. Bucky was worried that her buttons would come off and knock him down. After that, Bucky met with the staff of the company again. Although it was newly established, it was established by Howard. There were all the necessary departments, but no one knew what to do. But Bucky didn't say anything, he just said what everyone should do, and there will be the first project soon, and then under the surprised eyes of everyone, especially the surprised eyes of little Pepper who really stayed, walked away, and then plunged into the laboratory. Hey, Tony, what have you been doing lately? Hey, you turn off the music first, no, turn off the noise. Now that he saw little Pepper, Bucky had a whim, so he hadn't seen Tony for a long time, and Howard didn't even know what he was doing. Sure enough, I called his family and found that this guy was still in his garage, still listening to violent music, but when the music was turned off, he could still hear the crackling sound of typing on the keyboard. What? You are also researching artificial intelligence. Then have you researched anything? That is, not yet. Why don't you come to the laboratory and have a look? I have something good here. Neezy. Don't blame Uncle for speaking more straightforwardly, because you are still young and you don't understand. Uncle has to persuade you. Now that artificial intelligence is false. Uncle is afraid that you will not be able to grasp it, so you should work with Uncle on the internet, develop a browser, make a fortune. Don't keep thinking about PK with your dad. In the laboratory, Bucky said something like this to his nephew Tony, but he was just hooked up by the good guy and returned a big white eye. I've been talking for a long time. You're bluffing me to come here just to tell me this. I have nothing else to do. By the way, what's the name of the blonde girl at the front desk, Piper? Do you mind if I ask her out for dinner? The eldest nephew Tony has messy hair and a pair of dark circles under his eyes. He is obviously like his father. He has been obsessed with research and development for some time. Maria and Jarvis probably can't control him. But it's all so virtuous, and I still can't forget to pick up girls, and it's also fate, so I immediately fell in love with little Pepper who replaced Barbara as the front desk waiter. The eldest nephew really wanted to do the project of artificial intelligence. It is not difficult to guess. After all, Howard had already miniaturized the arc reactor and made a steel suit, but only developed artificial mental retardation. The eldest nephew wanted to surpass his old man. Dad, that's the only way to start. But except for Zola, who sacrificed his own soul, other people in this era can also develop artificial mental retardation. If they want to surpass Howard, who is helped by Bucky, even the eldest nephew is just with a definite goal, but no idea at all. Otherwise, I would not continue to lie in the garage listening to violent metal rock music. And web browsers are so forward-looking, and projects that no one has done yet can't impress Tony, which shows his determination. Bucky had wanted him to meet Zola. But after thinking about it, the eldest nephew finally found the target, and then I saw that there is an old antique from the World War I period. He has been researching artificial souls for decades. Don't dampen his enthusiasm again. Let him continue to dig into the horns. If you don't go crazy, you can't survive, and Bucky is also looking forward to it. Tony can hold back his big move, and after a while, he will smash out an artificial intelligence with a dwang sound. Anyway, it looks like you don't even have a clue. Why don't you change your mood? That's why I'm asking that blonde chick. As far as your kidney deficiency virtue is concerned, can you grasp it? Hey. Do you want BB? Bucky thought to himself that with your drunken appearance, even if I replace the big eagle with a big steel cannon, you can't compare to me if the time is shortened by half. Do you want to fly around for fun? Bucky pointed to the steel suit next to him. After meeting Pepper, Bucky always wanted to do something. Well, it's not impossible. Tony didn't refuse like last time, because the last time was a public appearance, which was a chance for others to charity. But this time it was similar to being called to drag racing. And which man does not love cars? What's more, this horse is riding a mecha. The last time he saw his dad's shocking appearance manipulating the steel suit on TV, he didn't know how sad he was. Come on then. Bucky ignored the elder nephew's tweaking, and pulled him to the steel suit, and remotely controlled the steel suit to scan and record his facial features and pupil information with the 3 electronic eyes, giving him the authority to operate. He also put on the Falcon flight wings himself. It's not just that I want my nephew to experience the fun of being an Iron Man. Moreover, the Stark group is in turmoil. Because of the S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, the business of the new company was suddenly suspended. So now, we must continue to tell the story to the public, telling the story of the new company's logo, Iron Man and Falcon. It's time for another Iron Man and Falcon sortie. But before that, let's teach the nephew the basic operations first. Tony didn't follow the set of, as long as people learn to run first, they will naturally learn to walk, this time. When they have a new toy, they get carried away and go straight to it without reading the instruction manual. It wasn't his own invention after all. However, he also participated in the final stage of the design, and besides inheriting his father's genius wisdom, he also inherited his father's talent as a genius pilot. Bucky just reminded him a few words, and he quickly got started. Oh oh oh. The jet engine was ignited, and the powerful airflow made the paper fly, and the bright brilliance made the steel suit lift up, and Tony screamed strangely. This was his first time, and under the excitement, he couldn't help being in a hurry, manipulating the steel suit to float in the air, scurrying around in a crooked manner. Fortunately, the laboratory is spacious enough for Tony to toss about. Alright. One time is enough. Soon Tony mastered the balance, and excitedly called out to Bucky. The moment he entered the steel suit, he knew exactly what he missed last time. He can't wait to experience more. Bucky smiled when he saw this, his eyes were slightly blue, and the two SLR French windows of the remote control laboratory opened left and right, but he rushed out and jumped down first. Hey! Someone expressed dissatisfaction with Bucky's early escape, and hurriedly chased him out. I saw Bucky swoop down, open the Falcon's flying wings in the air, spin and pull up, and draw a beautiful arc. Hey, show off. The speed of the steel suit is more than 5 times that of the Falcon's flying wing, but its flexibility is only less than 1/5 of that of the flying wing. Tony, a novice, can only watch Bucky show off in this steel jungle city. SAO operation, walking between buildings. So he simply soared into the sky, flew to a height without obstacles, and then accelerated. Oh oh oh. Yeah. It accelerated from 0 to Mach 1.5 in a few seconds, brought out a white line in the air, and triggered a sound burst of violent speed, which immediately captured the heart of Tony, an avid mechanical lover, and made him extremely high in an instant. And parallel flight could no longer satisfy Tony's fanatical impulse, so he soared straight into the sky. Users, please note that this steel suit has not yet solved the problem of icing as the air temperature drops as it ascends. Please pay attention to the flying altitude to avoid freezing the body. Huh. The slow electronic voice suddenly sounded from the helmet, making Tony startled. Aren't you that Dubai? Hello. I'm your flight assistant Dubai. Please note that you are still keeping the suit in the air. The suit will hover at an altitude of 3,000 meters in an emergency to protect the user. Are you already an artificial intelligence? Tony curled his lips. He who was most worried about this problem had a vague feeling. No, it wasn't that guy who ran ahead of him again, right? No. Dubai can't answer your question. It has detected that it is about to reach an altitude of 3,000 meters and entered the emergency hovering procedure. Tony didn't care that he suddenly lost control of the steel suit. The suit automatically reduced power output and kept hovering. He just asked again, are you an I? Dubai can't answer your question. And again. Tony asked 7 or 8 times in a row, are you an artificial intelligence? But all he got was, Dubai can't answer your question. I have never heard such an irritable answer like, ask you over and over again, are you annoying? Get out. Then he asked a few Turing test questions. Finally came to the conclusion that Dubai is still an artificial mentally retarded person. Although he is very cute, he is still mentally retarded. It has only improved a lot compared to before, but he still cannot reach the level of independent thinking. This made him slightly relieved. Tony's ears are almost deaf from metal rock recently, so he made up his mind on the route to take. If Bucky drives a big truck to drive him over, he will continue to spend his days and drinks in a boring way, eating and waiting to die, lying down. Let's inherit his billions of Dao Li's family property. And this once again aroused his competitive spirit. He has a genius, the cheat, that is not inferior to him, and is more diligent than him. If he doesn't hurry up, when will he have the opportunity to drink with him? For a while, Tony felt that manipulating the steel suit to fly was a bit boring, but his heart was on fire, and he couldn't wait to go back and do his own research. Hey, I'm going back. How about you? I have some problems. If you want to go back, hurry up. I want the steel suit to be useful. Oh? Do you need the kind-hearted Mr. Tony to help you? Tony wanted to get back the place from Bucky, or get back some pride, and he had to show something after playing with other people's toys, so he offered to help. It's just a pity that with his mouth, everything he said would taste bad. Bucky didn't bother to talk to him, and said in a slightly anxious voice, then you come, I'll give you my place. Tony heard that there seemed to be something really wrong, so he stopped being silly. He looked at the map on the helmet display, and it was the Brooklyn side of the Brooklyn Bridge. When he flew over and took a look, he immediately understood. A fuel tank truck with the logo of Roxxon Chemical overturned, and 3 vehicles were involved in an accident. The tank truck leaked a smoky liquid, which had already flowed into an upturned car. And Bucky has retracted the Falcon wing and landed, and is returning a Picora with half of its body hanging outside the bridge. Dubai has detected a chemical gas with an unknown composition. Have you started the corresponding rescue guidance? Huh. Tony, you can do it. Yes, start to guide. Dubai, what should I do? Tony had never had this kind of experience, and it was the first time he was on the scene, so he was a bit calm, but he had a smart head and a righteous heart, so he calmed down instantly. First turn on the airtight mode to prevent gas from entering the suit, then turn on the X-ray imaging mode to detect whether there are people around the harmful object, and calculate the rescue route. Tony, you came just in time. Come on, you can do it. Back to Bucky. He flew for a while first, saw his nephew Tony soaring into the sky, and ignored him, knowing that his enthusiasm would cool down before he could fly for a while, and he would not listen to him, so he flew his own. Then when I flew near the Brooklyn Bridge, I saw a fuel tank truck suddenly lost control, rampaging on the bridge, and was about to run over a car. Bucky directly accelerated and dived down, reaching the release distance of the quick cracking skill, and directly shot an electromagnetic short circuit. However, the electromagnetic short circuit can only make the tanker lose power, but the tanker's brakes were broken, and it rushed out due to inertia. However, the oil tanker suddenly turned over and was thrown sideways, only knocking several cars into the air. But before Bucky could heave a sigh of relief, he found that the oil tank of the oil tanker was smashed, and a mysterious smoking liquid flowed out, which soon flowed into the nearest car. At this time, a pickup truck was about to rush out of the bridge, and Bucky heard the cries of children inside, so he had to go to the rescue first. Fortunately, Tony arrived immediately, giving Bucky a helper. And Bucky also knew that with the help of the auxiliary system Dubai, the iron suit can be done well enough, and this is the opportunity for the iron suit to appear, so he entrusted the most dangerous job to Tony, and he himself went to rescue several people around him. People in the car. Bucky, I saved everyone. Tony controlled the steel battlesuit, first sprayed the cracked part of the oil tank, the special quick-setting liquid quickly sealed the crack, and sprayed dry ice to prevent the outflowing liquid from volatilizing, and then went to tear open the door of the car closest to the tanker, and rescued the family of 4 inside. Then there's the driver of the tanker. Damn it. Just as Tony cheered, he yelled and cursed, but he noticed that the big fat driver of the oil tanker turned his head to one side unnaturally, his neck was bent at 90 degrees, and he had a big bump. And Dubai also reminded him that 3 of the family of 4, the husband and wife and the younger boy, had lost their vital signs, and only the little girl survived. This is not the first time that Tony has witnessed death with his own eyes. The last time Obadiah made trouble and Xiaopingtu killed someone, it was much more horrifying than this. But it was the first time he rescued a person, only to find that the person was dead, carrying one person with his own hands. No, it was the death of 4 people. This made him a little overwhelmed, with a huge sense of powerlessness, and he lost the strength to move his fingers. He subconsciously looked at Bucky, wanting to hear some comfort, and to be more hypocritical, trying to get rid of this feeling of powerlessness. Jessica. But Bucky let out an exclamation, and then rushed over like a gust of wind, picked up the little girl who was still breathing, jumped off the bridge, and then spread his wings and soared into the sky. Hey. Where are you going? Who is that girl? Daisy's good friend, I want to take her to the hospital. Bucky recognized the little girl as the little guy's good friend Jessica Campbell, and he didn't have time to think about why she didn't go to school and why the family of 4 got together. He just wanted to send the little girl to the hospital as soon as possible. Hey, what should I do then? Hey. Tony didn't know what to do again, and the people around saw Iron Man and Falcon, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, came out to fight for justice again, rescued all the people in the accident, and a few brave ones rushed over to cheer, let Tony almost point the palm cannon at others. Bucky couldn't leave his nephew behind, so he said to him, go back, you have nothing to do with the scene, you have attracted too much attention, and instead hindered the fire and emergency personnel from coming. Oh, yes, then I'll go back first, I hope the little girl is okay. Well, it must be okay, otherwise Mr. Tony's first rescue operation would have failed too much. Tony nodded again and again. At first he was still listening to the cheers and felt a little refreshed, but he also felt that was the case when he heard it. He hurriedly ignited the fire and took off. Amidst the cheers of the people, he was a little sad to think of the deceased, and he felt a little refreshed when he heard the cheers. The complicated psychology rose into the sky, drew an arc in the sky and left. Bell, bell, bell. In the afternoon, at school, the bell rang for little Daisy's last class of the day, and the children rushed out of the classroom. 3 little girls ran up to little Daisy and asked her, hey, Daisy, we're going to that new frozen yogurt shop. Do you want to come together? Thanks to the last time Bucky and Maria Hill showed up with the little guy in school, and Bucky's great move to stop the students from fighting in the basketball hall, some little girls in the class got close with the little guy. And the little guy is always said by Bucky, so he doesn't seem so out of group. Although he basically doesn't take the initiative to talk to his classmates, Jessica is still a good friend in school, but when someone comes to play with her, she usually will not refute other people's face. Okay, I'm going too. The little guy really wants to go, but he just wants to go with Jessica, but for some reason, Jessica didn't come to school today, and I don't know if she is on sick leave. She plans to call home and ask, if sick, just in time to buy a frozen yogurt and visit her uncle. However, it was not Aunt Rita, the nanny, who was waiting at the school gate to pick up the little one, but Bucky, who was driving a silver-gray Ford Mustang. The little guy ran over, swooped, and was skillfully picked up by Bucky. Why did you come to pick me up from school? Aren't you busy with work? Oh, you're lazy too, right? Hey, what does also mean? Forget it, let's talk about it after getting in the car. My classmates and I have an appointment to go to the newly opened frozen yogurt shop. Can you give us a ride? The three little girls also came over, looking expectantly at Bucky dressed as an elite. Sorry, there is something urgent here. Next time, Daisy will treat you next time. The three little girls claimed yes, and Bucky took the little guy and left. It was really the first time I saw the little guy. Bucky looked hesitant to speak, and asked curiously, what's the hurry? I'm sorry, Daisy, there's no euphemism for this. Little Daisy had a question mark on her face, and she wondered what the hell was going on, to embarrass her uncle like this. It's not that my real parents came here, and they want to leave for me, right? The little guy is not the Shockwave girl in Bucky's memory who has been bumping and wandering. Until she was accepted by the Hairline brothers, she never felt the feeling of family, so she cared so much about her biological parents. Now that she is loved by her uncle and Aunt Hill, even if her parents come to find her, she will only ask them why first coldly. It's your friend Jessica. Oh my god, how could this happen? According to Bucky, Jessica's family had a car accident, and she was the only one who survived. She is still unconscious in the hospital, covering her mouth with her hands instantly, and her eyes are red. The two arrived at the hospital soon. In the single ward that Bucky opened for Jessica, the thin little girl lay quietly on the hospital bed, her face even paler. Little Daisy went over to hold Jessica's hand, gently touched the bruise on her face, and tears flowed down again. Uncle, why is Jessica still awake? Your uncle and I are also baffled. When Bucky came, he gave Jessica a therapeutic injection. The little girl's breathing quickly stabilized, and she sprayed a lot of mixed food from her mouth and nose. Unidentified bloody liquid came out. Obviously the leaked thing from the tanker was filled before. And Bucky put her at the hospital door, flew away, and then rushed to the hospital, and was told that the little girl was out of danger, and there was nothing serious about her body, with a few bruises and a slight bone fracture, but she just couldn't wake up. They also performed a CT scan of the little girl's brain, only to find that the little girl showed signs of a mild concussion, but it was not impossible to wake up. This hospital is the closest to the scene of the accident, but it is not considered a big hospital. They just suggest staying in the hospital for observation for one night. If you still can't wake up, but there are no other problems, you can ask Gao Ming to go to a better hospital for examination one time. Bucky had no choice but to listen to what the doctor said and tell little Daisy what he said, and the little guy wiped his tears again. Hi, I'm Lisa from Children's Services. While Bucky was comforting the little guy, an African-American woman with a badge pinned to her chest knocked 3 times and pushed the door open. May I ask, what is your relationship with this little girl? My daughter is her good friend. Fortunately, you are here. Ms. Lisa looked at Jessica with pity. After I received the notice, I investigated her situation. Her relatives are only her parents and a younger brother, and they all. Little Daisy wiped tears again, and Bucky said to her, you take care of Jessica here first, ma'am, let's go out and talk. After inviting Lisa to the door, he then asked, what will happen next? Jessica has no legal guardian, so we have to temporarily take care of her. We will assign an employee to take care of her. What if I want to be her guardian? Bucky pondered for a moment, then asked. He had already matched Jessica with an image in his memory, an old driver who drank all day long and spoke dirty words, a down-and-out female detective, and a superhuman who was thrown out of a car with one hand. Jewel Girl, or Wonder Woman, Jessica Jones. As for why Jessica's surname is Campbell instead of Jones, Bucky has only watched the episodes, and there is no origin story about her, but he found it on the internet. He knew that her superpowers came from a car accident, which exposed her to a special chemical potions, thus gaining superpowers such as super strength and flight. Only 4 members of Jessica's family were exposed to the chemical agents, and the other 3 were unfortunate, and only she survived. It was such a coincidence that he met him, Bucky was already 100% sure. And even if the little girl is only Campbell, not Jones, she is not the poor woman in memory who was hypnotized by a pervert called the Purple Man, played in various ways, and made Bucky watch the show to make him angry. Just because she is the only friend of little Daisy, and now she has no relatives, no one to take care of her, and she is about to be reduced to the little guy before she met her. And Bucky is also capable of taking care of her. Anyway, there is already a little guy in the family, one is also raised, and the two are also raised. Bucky's choice was simple. That couldn't be better. Ms. Lisa is also kind, and she also hopes that the little girl will be properly taken care of. It is rare to have such a kind person, and it seems that the family conditions are quite good. The little girl is considered a blessing in misfortune. I can take you through the necessary procedures, but first make a simple application. I will verify your identity information, and you can take care of Jessica temporarily while she is in the hospital. Bucky took the form that Lisa had pulled out from the briefcase, filled it out, signed it with Johnny Lynn's name, and handed it back to her. Lisa took the form, turned and left, and went to call to check on Bucky's situation. Before Bucky returned to the ward, Maria Hill came over. I brought you dinner and some daily necessities. How is little Daisy's friend? I was going to tell you. Bucky hugged Hill lightly, and sighed, things are impermanent. Who called? Let me see, Dumpling. Who is this? In the hospital. Bucky told little Daisy and Maria Hill that he wanted to take Jessica in. The little guy naturally agrees with both hands. She is having this kind of thought, but she doesn't know how to tell Bucky. Hill also thinks it is very good. Of course, he has to wait for Jessica to wake up and ask her about it. Opinion. The matter was tentatively settled. When the three of them were eating something simple in Jessica's ward, Bucky wiped the little guy's mouth with the pizza in one hand. The mobile phone rang suddenly and he asked Hill to answer it for him. She asked who Jiaozi was. Naturally, it couldn't be Tianjin Fan's younger brother. Bucky was a little embarrassed. This was the contact information of Betty Ross that Banner left for him when he said goodbye to Dr. Bruce Banner. Bucky didn't even think about it at the time, so he just entered the name as a dumpling. Back then, I only called this number once. Betty Ross probably had something else to do or was in a bad mood. Bucky only said that he was Bruce's friend, but didn't elaborate. Betty Ross probably didn't take it to heart. I just said that I will get in touch with you later. Unexpectedly, after this, it has passed until now. Bucky naturally couldn't explain the interconnection between Jiaozi and sister-in-law. He vaguely said that it was a friend's nickname, and quickly picked up the phone. This is Johnny. Oh, hello, of course I remember. Are you in New Jersey? Can I pick you up? Well, I'll find someone to pick you up. The gas station on Route 88. Okay, just wait there, they'll be there soon. Hill vaguely heard the voice of a young woman, and asked curiously, does your friend need help? Bucky gave her an inexplicable expression. God knows this bowl of dumplings. Cough. What happened to this sister-in-law? She is a typical superhero girlfriend who is a big killer. In short, bring the dumplings back first, and bring them back to my sister-in-law. But Bucky won't go by himself. That time in Obadiah, he cheated on his daughter and ran away directly. This time, he must spend time with the little guy. Who should I call? Barbara. He forgot to ask for her contact information. Can you call someone for me? Hill didn't say anything, but Bucky also understood her little eyes, and he didn't explain what dumplings are just now, so he said this to her. Yes. Hill nodded happily, took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. Sharon, help me pick up someone. Well, wait a moment. Bucky took the phone. Hello. What he heard was the voice of his future second wife, Sharon. Yes, her name is Betty Ross, she is 25 and 6 years old. Why is Sharon with you? Betty Ross. I heard you say that name. Bucky hung up the phone, and he and Hill asked each other almost at the same time. Bucky answered first, Dr. Bruce Banner's girlfriend. That Bruce Banner. Yeah, when I sent him out of the country, he asked me to take care of it, but... Bucky explained a few words, and then asked, how did Sharon get to you? The academy contacted me and asked if I could bring some interns, not just Sharon, but I have 3 new students here. How did you and Sharon meet? The two of them stayed here to accompany Jessica, chatting with each other, chatting with the little guy, and helping her with her homework. In less than an hour, the little round-faced second sister-in-law brought the dusty Betty Ross over. Do you know about Bruce? You were the only one of his friends who contacted me after he disappeared, and I didn't even know he had a friend like you. You must know what's wrong with him, right? But Betty Ross has a fiery temper. When Bucky took Hill and took her to a corner where no one was around, he asked a lot of questions. Find a place to talk slowly. You haven't had dinner yet, have you? But Bucky was not in a hurry to speak. He always had to start and end his speech. Seeing that this person's clothes hadn't been changed for several days, his hair was a little greasy, and his lips were a little chapped. He was also a little curious. What happened to this person? No, I just want to know about Bruce. Gollum. Mrs. Dumpling said no need, but her body was very honest. When Bucky mentioned food, her stomach started to growl. Well, sorry, I haven't eaten properly for several days. In the restaurant, Betty Ross has an imageless bacon fried egg burger in his left hand, a strawberry milkshake in his right hand, and a handful of French fries in his mouth. He is obviously very hungry. After taking a few bites, I noticed that both Bucky and Hill were looking away, while everyone else in the restaurant was looking at her, blushing with embarrassment. I actually ran away from home. The old man in my family thought that I always went to him to inquire about Bruce. Once he caught me in his office and grounded me, and it became more and more serious. Finally, this time I also found a female soldier to watch over me. So this is the first time you have made trouble for General Ross? Seeing Betty Ross's upright look, Bucky couldn't help being a little amused. This time I just ran far away, from New Mexico all the way here. Oh, I also called Bruce's cousin Susan, but after Bruce's accident, I didn't even contact her. That is his only relative. That's why I want to find you. You must know about Bruce, right? Ms. Ross. Call me Betty. Betty Ross is not familiar, but has the expression on my face that I am ashamed to be with my old stubborn. Ms. Betty, I did know about Dr. Banner before, but that was a long time ago. How come? Has he never contacted you again? We have had contact, but it was all academic discussions. Betty Ross heard it and gave Bucky a, just you, expression. Well, we means mainly Mr. Howard Stark, and I can introduce you to him. Bucky knew that Howard and General Ross were at odds, so it would be interesting to send his daughter to Howard. The appearance of Betty Ross was just an episode, and Bucky really hadn't heard from Bruce Banner for several months, so there was really nothing he could do. And even if he could really help, Bucky subconsciously didn't want to help when Hulk had no gaming experience last time. Not to mention that there are endless things to do in front of him. Even if he is free, he doesn't want to have any contact with Hulk again now. Sister-in-law, it's not brother that I don't want to help you, but your bowl of dumplings, and your house's lab of garlic. Brother, I really can't handle it. It's easy to talk about it, but it was fooled by Betty Ross, who was a little bit reluctant. Hill went to the Afterlife nightclub to preside over the overall situation. Bucky also returned to the hospital, and was told by Sharon, who accompanied little Daisy, that Jessica was awake and was being examined by the doctor. Will this poor little girl awaken her superpowers now? Now I really want to buy a big house. Night, Bucky's house. On the sofa, Bucky hugged Hill, and the two were covered with a blanket, watching a soap opera. The two have been picked up from the hospital by little Daisy and Jessica. After Jessica woke up, she didn't awaken any superpowers, and her injuries didn't heal quickly, but the doctor checked her carefully again, and still didn't find any problems. The key is the news that Jessica is the only family of 4, and she is the only one left. However, it would not be enough not to mention the news. The little girl woke up and went to find her parents and younger brother, and then she was completely dumbfounded. Jessica is not as strong as little Daisy, and what happened to the two of them was different. She lost her soul and didn't respond to anyone who told her. She finally came back to her senses, and she was still confused. Just nodded slowly. It made little Daisy start to weep again. However, it was little Daisy's crying that made Jessica shed 2 lines of hot tears, and then curled up into a ball and cried for a long time. Only then did Bucky bring her home. Now sleeping with the little guy in Bucky's room, Hill was a little worried about the little girl, went to the Afterlife nightclub to arrange things and then rushed back, knowing that the little girl is fine for the time being, but tomorrow he doesn't know what to do, and it was a sigh. Maybe you can hire a psychiatrist for counseling, or raise a pet, such as a cat or a dog, to help her release her emotions, but the most important thing is to look at herself. In Jessica's situation, she can only wait for her to adjust her emotions slowly. External factors have little influence on her. She can persevere, but it cannot be achieved overnight. The next day, the sun rose as usual, and Bucky asked the nanny, Aunt Rita, to introduce another nanny. She had other jobs, and Bucky wanted to find someone who could take care of Jessica around the clock. And when Jessica woke up, she became in a daze again, unwilling to communicate with anyone. Bucky also had to put it down for the time being, let little Daisy go to school first, and he came to the company himself. Then I saw the eldest nephew Tony came again, chatting and laughing with little Pepper at the front desk. Hey man, how was the little girl yesterday? The eldest nephew was out of sight and hooked up with Bucky shoulder to shoulder, which made the little Chili cover her mouth and chuckle. These two people are really destined, is this right? Jessica. Still recovering. Why are you here again? Isn't it determined to refuse the temptation to make a living together, and insist on going back and continuing to hold back the big move? Mr. Tony thought about it for a while, and felt that your previous suggestion made a little sense. Although people can learn to run first, they don't need to learn to walk, but they can't learn how to fly first. Do you still want to continue playing the steel suit? The eldest nephew had a clear and righteous expression on his face, but Bucky just rolled his eyes in exchange. Tisk. Don't tell me if you see it through, but Tony doesn't feel embarrassed at all. Mr. Tony just thinks that although you are slightly inferior to me in terms of IQ, you are still much better than others, and you are qualified to be the greatest in the future. Mechanic cooperation. How about it? Do you want to develop artificial intelligence with me? Speak humanly, otherwise you would be in a daze listening to metal rock here. Tisk. The eldest nephew hesitated for a while, and finally said impatiently, okay. I can't forget yesterday's experience. I can't calm down by myself. My mind is full of yesterday's scenes. You are satisfied? After he left the scene of the accident yesterday, he really thought, well, he can't waste his life anymore. He has to work harder, otherwise he doesn't know when he will surpass his father and Bucky. But as soon as he sat down, the scene when he saved people kept flashing in his mind, the nervousness at the beginning, the excitement when he rescued people, the disappointment and unwillingness when he found out that he couldn't save people, and the cheers of the people. With pictorial memory, his mind is full of this, and he has no intention of thinking about artificial intelligence at all. In the end, Tony had to admit that he was too good at manipulating the iron suit to do something meaningful, to help others, and to be cheered on. Having had that kind of experience, he was full of the idea of wanting to do more and do better, and his mind was full of inspiration on how to improve the steel suit, optimize the suit, and add new functions. How can there be any intention to hold back artificial intelligence in a daze? That's why Tony tossed and turned all night. He didn't fall asleep for a minute. After hesitating for a long time, he finally put aside his face problem and came to the company early in the morning. And since he decided to put his face down, he also thought of more. Since it is inevitable to cooperate with Bucky, after all, the steel suit is the work of him and his father. Develop artificial intelligence. He also took a deep breath before. In fact, when it comes to research, he spends on trust funds. How can he have more resources than the company opened by the person who set up the trust fund for him? Moreover, it is not impossible to compete with each other in research and development. He wants to see who is more skilled and who can play a leading role in the research. If according to what his father said, they both get half of the credit for researching the steel suit, then if Mr. Tony gets 100% of the credit for researching artificial intelligence, wouldn't his father win together? However, the ideal is very full, and the reality is very skinny. Are you sure? No regrets. Of course, we will do what we say and do what we say. Don't worry, we have worked together before. I won't give up halfway, let alone distract my attention to other things. After all, Tony is not a great master in the future. When he reaches the state of perfection, he is not wandering outside, and it will not delay his days as a genius inventor, or being a good man at home, a good husband and a good father, and he can also find time to study time travel. He thought that Bucky was afraid that he would be half-hearted, fishing for 3 days and drying the nets for 2 days, afraid that he would fool around again. Mr. Tony called the prodigal son back and bid farewell to the past. Okay, Zora, meet our new partner, Mr. Tony. It's a good thing that Tony wants to join. Howard is old and still in charge of the shield bureau. He really doesn't have the extra energy to use the iron suit. And Bucky also wants to help his nephew become the second generation of Iron Man. Just in case he needs Iron Man to snap his fingers in the future, he can wear the Iron Man suit himself, but he needs Tony to become Iron Man. And Howard didn't have the energy to be Iron Man, so he didn't have the energy to continue doing research. Bucky also needed another super genius. While Zola is already there, the more super talents the better. So since Tony wanted to join the group, Zola didn't need to, and couldn't hide it from him, so he had to challenge his self-esteem. Hi, Mr. Tony, I'm Dr. Zola, and I look forward to working with you. Me. I knew it. You bastard. Tony saw a big red and blue pixelated head suddenly appearing on the display screen. The corners of his eyes and mouth twitched nonstop, pointing at Bucky and speechless. Who am I? Where am I? And what am I going to do? Tony sat on the chair, his eyes raised up blankly, and his whole body gave off a feeling of burnt out. Just now, he asked Dr. Zola a lot of questions about the Turing test, and finally admitted unwillingly that a certain annoying guy was one step ahead of him. No, a street is something from the beautiful country at all the gap between the two sides. He was still thinking hard, and when he had no idea at all, he had already made it for artificial intelligence. Sure enough, that guy was trying to annoy him on purpose. First fool him with 2 retarded people, Big White and Little D, and then suddenly throw out Dr. Zola to dampen his enthusiasm. And successfully hit him directly to doubt his life. There is also a steel suit and artificial intelligence, so what is the point of his hard work? How can he surpass others? Or go back to eat and wait to die, waiting to inherit billions of property? This life is so simple and unpretentious. Actually, Dr. Zola is not artificial intelligence. Bucky deliberately didn't say anything, and let Tony feel it for himself, because this eldest nephew has been going smoothly since he can remember, and has never suffered any setbacks. And now that Obadiah is gone, I don't know if there will be a training similar to Iron Man 1 waiting for him in the future. The eldest nephew's temperament is far from enough to become the Iron Man in Bucky's impression. So whenever you get the chance, hone in on it. Tony rolled his eyes directly. You don't need to comfort me, I'm not stupid, or are you still trying to taunt me? But Bucky looked at him seriously. Or am I telling the truth? What about the scientific spirit that believes that everything is possible? The smarter a person is, the more he thinks that he can think of everything, and that what he thinks is the absolute. Therefore, any super genius will always be blinded by his wisdom. Tony was still noncommittal. Then are you telling the truth? Silly girl, of course Uncle lied to you. Can you grasp Uncle's tricks? Although I really want to tease my nephew like this again, but I guess he is really impatient. So Bucky just nodded. Of course, Dr. Zola was not actually created by me at all, but by Dr. Zola himself. What do you mean? Tony was a little confused by Bucky's words. Then we have to start from 1942. I went to chat with Piper. Like listening or not. Tony, who was about to leave, didn't hear the retention, and turned around again. Does it really take that long to start? Soul algorithm, digital soul? Are you sure this is not the story you want to write in your next novel? I know, if someone told me that, I might actually write a story about it. Time travel is a digital ghost or something. But the fact is that Dr. Zola really created a soul code, and created this digital Dr. Zola. This may not be a soul transfer, but it is a replica of the same wisdom as the original Dr. Zola, the digital soul of the mindset. Let me see his core code. Tony knew that this request was a bit excessive, but he couldn't help his curiosity. But Bucky nodded directly. In fact, he was looking for someone to help him take a look. He still hasn't been able to understand the core code that can reproduce Dr. Zola's thinking mode. And the nephew who can create Jarvis and Friday, Ultron and Vision in the future is obviously a good candidate. Is this the core code? Tony looked at the dense lines of code on the monitor, a computer language he had never seen before, and there were more than 30 pages one after another, a little confused. No, this is just the core algorithm in the core code, the structure of the core program, and there is much more specific content than this. Tony wanted to say that you were making it up, but the problem was that he couldn't understand the content, but it didn't mean he couldn't feel the inexplicable laws contained therein. A faint sense of powerlessness rose in his heart. Even with his genius brain, it's hard to imagine how someone could have done all this decades ago. Compared with this kind of genius who transcended the times. He doesn't doubt that he is a genius, he can only say, Dr. Zola is simply a lunatic. This hit him harder than Bucky hitting him in the face with artificial intelligence. However, he is such a proud person, the proud son of heaven who has never suffered any blows in his life. He is not depressed at all, and he is not discouraged. Instead, after a moment of silence, he asked, "Can you speak this language?" "Look for yourself, it's all on the computer." Bucky had already entered a description file of the computer language used by Dr. Zola in order to show Howard. Tony nodded, found the document, his eyes were full of fighting spirit. Bucky showed him the core secrets without reservation. He must come up with something to show Bucky. As the saying goes, come and don't be indecent. The shock he experienced today, sooner or later, Bucky will also experience it. By the way, can I have some music? That will help me think. Oh, I'd better have another cappuccino, thank you. Seeing that his eldest nephew had entered the state, and he was still looking out of the way, and even wanted to shock others, Bucky was very angry and funny. But a super genius, of course he has to be served, and all great inventions are pointed at him. So Bucky picked up Tony with one hand just like when he met Tony for the first time. "Hey, you violent maniac, you were bullying, I want to protest." "Hey, everyone is so familiar, can you save some face?" Bucky didn't directly throw him out of the building, but just found him a separate office outside the laboratory. "Ms. Potts, come here." Then I called the little Pepper at the front desk. "Mr. Lind, what are your orders?" Little Pepper quickly trotted over, a little excited in her heart. Is the opportunity she was waiting for to be appreciated by the president finally coming? Although she doesn't know what the new company does until now, she doesn't need to know. She is studying management, not scientific research. She just needs to know that the new company is started by Stark, and it must have great potential. There is a new job for you, and that is to be Mr. Stark's personal assistant. Okay. This is my honor. Little Chili was stunned for a moment, and then burst into greater ecstasy. Being appreciated by the chairman is even better than being appreciated by the president. Mr. Lind, when will I take office? Where can I meet Mr. Stark? Far in the sky, close in sight, come, Ms. Potts, meet Mr. Tony Stark. Hi Piper. Sorry I didn't say my full name earlier. Tony gave Little Pepper a smile that he thought was extremely handsome. But she only got a response of, "That's it. I thought it was just a new researcher, but I didn't expect to be the stupid son of the chairman's family." But even so, what's the point of you admiring my old lady? Although Little Pepper urgently needs a chance to become a leader, she is very confident in her abilities. She wanted to rise to the top based on her ability, not because she had any thoughts about the little boss. In fact, she doesn't have much affection for Tony yet. Before talking and laughing with Tony, it was half polite, half new environment. She was originally a student on campus, but when she first entered the workplace, she experienced the indifference of the workplace and the insignificance at the bottom of the biological chain. She desperately needed Tony, a person who pursued her, so that she could regain her confidence and sense of security. Moreover, she is not a girl who can be easily seduced. She is in middle school and university, surrounded by suitors, and she has never been taken advantage of by anyone or hurt by anyone. And Tony, who looks like a horsefork bug from the inside to the outside, is almost like a libertine with a pornographic word on top of his head. It's okay to chat and joke a few words at ordinary times, and it's okay to be an ordinary friend, but if you want to give it to Little Pepper in a few seconds, let's line up. There are too many people who think so. However, in the final analysis, Little Pepper is just an intern on the second day of her internship, and she is not qualified to bargain with the acting president of the company. Even if she argues, the president can't deduct her salary, but that's because she has no salary at all. She will only get a review after the internship is over, and she never wants a company with Stark in its name to give her a job. Review. He had no choice but to put on a workplace smile and accept the job of serving the chairman's stupid son. And Bucky, who had facilitated a pair of CPS in advance, also put Tony aside and let him continue to hold back his big moves alone. Even if the eldest nephew is a super genius, it is not a day's work to understand Zola's self-written computer language, and then make some tricks from his core code. It's not the full-body Iron Man of the future, so it will take 2 or 3 days, right? Bucky looked forward to his eldest nephew being able to shock him as much as he did today, and he also shocked him. In fact, the eldest nephew is just a prodigal son, and he has just started to put his mind on the right path, and he has just started. In terms of surpassing an era, Tony is no better than Zola, or even worse. Not to mention arc energy and steel suits, or even nanotechnology, time and space travel. Let's just say that he mastered the mature holographic projection technology in 2010 or even earlier, which can be manipulated and touched by hand, instead of the projection screen imaging technology of Pepper's ghost, which can explain the problem very well. Up. That was a technology that people hadn't been able to realize when Bucky traveled through. But it's better to give the eldest nephew some time first, and Bucky is busy with his own affairs first. That is to establish a project for the company. Bucky plans to build a web browser and release it before the Mosaic browser is released. And now with the help of Dr. Zola, who has a brand new supercomputer body, although Dr. Zola has never been in contact with the internet, Bucky does not intend to let him contact it for the time being, but the local area network is also a network, and the castle that Dr. Zola controlled him before is also a network. For Bucky's request, he didn't find it difficult. This also allowed Bucky Province to structure it a little bit, saving a lot of time, so that he had time to digest the knowledge and technology he got from Dr. Zola. Every super genius has a lot of fantastic ideas, and many of them are applied in practice. And Dr. Zola is not a super genius in a single discipline, he is proficient in disciplines, including but not limited to biology, medicine, mechanical engineering, energy engineering, and electronic engineering. His most important inventions are various weapon vehicles during World War E, super soldiers, cosmic cube energy weapons, Bucky's mechanical arm, and his own digital soul. The first thing Bucky studied was his own mechanical arm. It's not that this is closely related to him, this has nothing to do with him long ago, it was replaced by a system prosthetic body on the first day of time travel, but this is the easiest to chew. Bucky didn't think he was a super genius just because he had been with Howard for a long time and became the father of the steel suit. Now that he has Dr. Zola, he can drink with his nephew. He has a clear understanding that he is just an ordinary person, relying on the black technology given by the system and the added intelligence attribute points. He has the ability to keep up with the rhythm of these super geniuses. He can keep up with 90.00% of the effort, but the most important 1% of inspiration is a little bit worse. Just like Zola's core code, Bucky nods slowly by himself, and within 3 to 5 months, he could figure it out. But give it to the eldest nephew. Maybe he listened to violent metal rock for a few days, and a few sparks of inspiration flashed through, and then he slapped his hands, and he had an idea. So he still chooses to study something that is relatively easy and he is very interested in. Moreover, the steel unicorn arm is also a proof that Zola has surpassed the times. Even Howard did not come up with the technology of mechanically connecting nerves and neural sensing to control machinery. He came up with it decades ago. This is of great help to continue to improve the steel suit, and improve the Falcon flying wings by the way. While Bucky and Tony were each obsessed with research. The company's executives, as well as the heads of the planning department, R&D department, etc., were all called into a conference room. But I didn't see the little boss. The little boss here refers to Robert Johnny Lind, who everyone thinks is the romantic product of the big boss Mr. Howard Stark in his early years. When Tony, another small boss, appeared in the company, many people gossiped and even opened a handicap, betting whether Tony was here to make trouble, but found that the two small bosses were very harmonious shoulder to shoulder. Gossiping aside, they soon saw the little boss on the projection screen of the projector connected to the computer. Everyone, I'm here to introduce the company's new project, which is also our flagship product in the near future, the Baymax Dubai browser. A group of people quickly figured it out, and started a trial run within the company. They all used not the first in the world, but the first web browser based on a home computer and a plague, and were instantly overwhelmed by this novel and cool gadgets, and the company's official website with a big white theme designed by Bucky. At first, they were a little bit confused about the company's prospects, but they were only fooled by Howard's signboard, and Howard had stopped fooling him recently, and the company members who were a little worried felt at ease in an instant, and became excited. And soon, as the internal preparations were completed and a press conference was held, the entire New York press exploded again. Of course, that's all for later, and it's still when Bucky just asked Zola to take out the browser and the company's personnel are conducting internal testing. It was also when Bucky was working on the design principle of the unicorn arm. He got a call from Howard. Yeah, Tony is here, don't worry, he has gone to study artificial intelligence again. If he wants to wear a battlesuit again, I will watch him too. By the way, Betty Ross is looking for you. How do you talk to him? He said. What, you can't find Dr. Banner? Howard Stark has really been completely forgotten by Dr. Bruce Banner lately. The Shield was founded by him and his comrades who he can rest assured to entrust behind him. It is his hard work. He will never allow Shield to be destroyed in the hands of Hydra, nor will Shield and Hydra the Snake died together, destroyed in his own hand. The arrest of Pierce undoubtedly gave him the best opportunity and environment to clean up the inside of Shield, and he devoted all his energy to it without hesitation. Not to mention Bruce Banner, he's not even Iron Man anymore. And once Howard invested as much enthusiasm as he did in research, the results were obvious. He quickly controlled the situation in Shield and stabilized the situation. According to the list provided by Pierce, careful identification and screening were carried out, and the Hydra personnel were cleaned up in a cautious but decisive manner that did not cause internal panic as much as possible. Among them, those who are deceived should first be persuaded and educated, and then supervised and controlled. Those who are still lurking and have not committed any crimes shall be temporarily detained and questioned in detail. The diehards were all imprisoned in Dr. Zola's isolated island in the Arctic Circle, to keep company with those superfighters. The situation of panic did not appear. Howard quickly took control of the members who were truly loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. Although sacrifices were inevitable in the process, Pierce's backhand still caused some damage. There are also quite a few Hydra members who managed to escape in the end, escaped from the mainland of the beautiful country, lurked and hid, and there is no possibility of finding them for a long time in the future. But the overall situation tends to be optimistic. When all this is over, S.H.I.E.L.D. will inevitably suffer severe damage, but it has removed the internal cancer, and one day it will recover. But S.H.I.E.L.D. is not only an internal problem. Although it is a worldwide organization, it is dominated by the United States and is also under the jurisdiction of the United States. Pierce is also an official of the Federation. If there is a problem with the director of such a large organization, it is natural it will be questioned and held accountable by Congress. Howard also had to deal with various congressmen, ministers, and executives, playing intrigue and steaming struggles. In addition, he has to deal with the military's problems, Stark Industries' defense orders, the military's desire for steel suits and Falcon flying wings. It's no wonder that even if he has a genius mind, he has to suspend the rectification of Stark Industries, maintain the existing arms business, and in order to stabilize the board of directors, he also agreed to consider Stark Industries and Stark and Lind Smart Technology the matter of cross-holding, and then completely ignore the company. Fortunately, although Howard was physically and mentally exhausted, he was still able to handle it. But he really forgot everything about Dr. Banner, whom he hadn't contacted for a long time. Until Bucky, who was, felt that what he was doing was not enough to exhaust him to death, so he was sent to him by Betty Ross. He really didn't have time to ask Betty Ross about the specific situation. He just knew that Hulk had to go to that town just to see her, and General Ross sent so many troops as cannon fodder. After waking up, she was stimulated to directly transform back into Banner. Since it can affect Hulk, it doesn't matter whether Dr. Banner wants to see him or not. However, when Howard wanted to contact Dr. Banner, he found that the call had been made and the secret message was left behind, but he couldn't wait for a reply. Hulk appeared again? Bucky hurriedly arranged the company's affairs, talked to Maria Hill again, and hurried to the Tricurved Wing building in Washington, D.C. In Howard's office, Betty Ross was also there. General Ross didn't seem to care about her escape, but only cared about whether she would secretly go to his office to steal things after she escaped. Betty Ross was very irritable, with a slightly plump figure, walking up and down nonstop. Howard handed Bucky a newspaper with a helpless expression. Recently, most of my energy has been spent on internal issues. Overseas personnel are urgently transferred back for screening and protection. The news from overseas is too late. If Ms. Ross hadn't come to find me, I wouldn't even know what happened. Bucky took a newspaper called the Columbia Daily and looked at it. The front page was a huge but blurry photo of the back of a huge muscle explosion in the dark. The background was a slum that had been demolished into ruins. Then it was written in Spanish, the gangs in the slums had a shootout, but the stronghold was destroyed by unknown monsters, causing a large number of casualties. This made Bucky cover his face, followed by a sigh, but in fact, it's just a matter of time. Dr. Banner has always been a time bomb. He just exploded abroad. Sorry, Ms. Betty, no offense. Can't you think of a way to find Bruce? It's obviously a more mysterious department than CIA and FBI. We really don't owe you anything. If it weren't for me, you might be sleeping on the street, okay? Bucky knew that Betty Ross only had Bruce Banner in his heart, but her petulant temper still made him feel a little uncomfortable. But who let Betty Ross have an influence on Hulk now? This is no less than the super gun against Superman in the taillight version of Junglian. For Hulk's super weapon, if Hulk goes berserk again, just point at her. Don't worry, Ms. Betty, as you can see, we don't have enough power to find Dr. Banner now. Unless Hulk appears again, we can have a clear goal, otherwise we will just look for a needle in a haystack. What use does the old lady want you for? My mother might as well go to my father. Oh, that won't work. Perhaps we can see what's going on with General Ross. Betty doesn't want to find her father, but Bucky thinks this is a way. After all, he never forgets Banner and only has him in his heart, not just Betty and Rose. Moreover, General Ross's connections in the army are not shallow. He was not influenced by the Hulk too much. Whereabouts of Bruce Banner? My strength is really limited. What about Fury? I went to Detroit. Senior agents of his level basically have missions. Well, where is General Ross? Can you always find out? Howard looked like he had been drained of all his energy, and he couldn't squeeze out a single drop. If Bucky didn't care about him, he would die suddenly. Probably with such eyes, he looked at Bucky eagerly. Bucky, who originally wanted to go back and continue stroking the unicorn arm, could only sigh. General Ross's whereabouts are unknown, and it is impossible to find out where he is. Then he must have found out where Dr. Banner is. Bucky covered his face again, feeling that trouble was coming. New Mexico. On the interstate. 3 military light tactical trucks lined up. The one in the middle is inside a modified bulletproof carriage. Bruce Banner wore a messy chicken coop head, dirty clothes, and his hands and feet were shackled by special shackles. The tall man sitting across from him, with glossy white hair combed back, was wearing a field uniform, and was smoking a cigar. It was his cheap father-in-law, General Ross, who stared at him from time to time. General Ross, is this necessary? The bumpy road made Dr. Banner feel uncomfortable in his hands and feet. If I wanted to run, I wouldn't have come here with you, would I? What do you want? Is it enough to unshackle you? Do I need to treat you as a guest again? General Ross smiled contemptuously. He had no sympathy for this son-in-law. How much trouble did this irritating coward cause him? General Ross, how is Betty? Can I see her? At least talk to her. I miss her. Shut up. General Ross really wanted to slap the source of his daughter's troubles all the time. But he was also afraid of being hit by that monster. If you're doing it for Betty's sake, you shouldn't mention her name in the future. I know, but I just can't help it. I just want to see her again. General Ross was silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, do you really want to see Betty? Coming. Dr. Banner is not stupid, nor is he stupid. He is not a nerd who is only obsessed with research. Otherwise, he would not be able to coax the cheap old man to be with Betty Ross before transforming into the Hulk. In the slums of Columbia, he worked as an emergency doctor out of good intentions, but when he was treating several gang members who were shot, he encountered a fire and was shot in the body, forcing the Hulk out. Hulk almost demolished that slum area. After waking up, Banner was very annoyed, and he felt that this could not go on like this. He didn't know when he was hiding, there was no quiet environment, and there was no advanced laboratory. Mr. Stark has not responded yet. When will he find a solution to Hulk? And he really missed Betty Ross so much, he almost collapsed into Hulk when he thought of it a few times. So he bravely went back to the country secretly, wandering outside alone for almost a year, and he also had some connections. Unexpectedly, not long after crossing the US-Mexico border, he was found by General Ross. It's just that, although General Ross was also furious, he just talked and didn't do anything. He didn't come up and did it. Instead, he asked Dr. Banner to go with him. Dr. Banner always felt that something was wrong. The cheap old man seemed to be very angry, but he didn't seem to have to die. It seemed that she didn't want to hang out with him forever. Sure enough, Dr. Banner heard what he couldn't have heard from General Ross. In my dreams, no matter what, I will see Betty again. Dr. Banner is not afraid of being used by General Ross, he is only afraid that General Ross will stick to him forever. Just like before, he, a top scientist in the world who could win the Nobel Prize, was drawn into the top secret experiment of the military by General Ross, so he bid farewell to fame and fortune. Didn't he get together with Betty smoothly? Okay, as long as you, and the monster in your body help me solve a problem, I'll consider letting you meet Betty. General Ross said so, although he doesn't know where his daughter has gone now. Hulk. General Ross, what do you want me to help you with? Dr. Banner originally thought that the cheap father-in-law asked him to help continue the research on gamma rays and super soldier serum, and it happened that he also needed military resources. Anyway, General Ross couldn't slice him, and he didn't even dare to lock him up. He didn't even dare to make him suffer too much, otherwise he would just let that monster run out. But he heard that the cheap old man just wanted that monster to come out? You'll find out after a while. General Ross started to look sloppy, then leaned back, closed his eyes and rested, and stopped talking. Dr. Banner had no choice but to guess wildly, and couldn't help but think of Betty, thinking of the opportunity to meet the love he had been thinking about day and night, and couldn't help but feel a burst of fire in his heart. Hey, look, it's Johnny Pyro's convoy. And at this moment, the convoy passed a gas station by the side of the road. The soldier on the passenger seat of the first car suddenly pulled the driver's sleeve, pointed at the RV that was being refueled, and yelled at the driver. The sky is getting darker, and the red, yellow and blue flame logo on the RV is illuminated by a circle of lights on the edge of the car, which is extremely eye-catching. Okay, I know you like stunt cars, stop yelling, I haven't seen you yelling so loudly before. The two were talking about Johnny Blazer, a stunt driver who has emerged recently. He recently jumped 25 trucks side by side in a stadium in Texas, with a leap distance of more than 50 meters. He was called a crazy driver, a death driver. Also in the stunt car circle, he became famous in one battle. Of course, with the task in hand, it is impossible for this explosive Johnny fanfighter to stop to ask for an autograph. 10 minutes later, the convoy drove for more than 10 kilometers, suddenly turned, left the road, and went deep into the Gobi Desert. Then it stopped at a place where nothing could be seen in the distance, but it was actually a huge circular metal plate. It's here. General Ross, what's down there? Dr. Banner, who got out of the car, knew that this should be an underground military secret base, and there were strange sounds faintly coming from under the metal plate. You will know when you go down. General Ross still ignored him, but let his men go down to the control panel on the ground and control the opening of the metal plate. I need to know what's down there first. Hey, what are you doing? Put me down. But when the metal plate separated from the middle, opening a gap as wide as one person, General Ross waved his hand, and the two soldiers were thrown directly to Dr. Banner. Dr. Banner fell freely like this, passed through 3 open metal partitions, and fell directly to the bottom more than 30 meters deep. General Ross listened attentively, and nodded in satisfaction when the screams stopped abruptly as Dr. Banner hit the ground. Boys, unload the stuff. He asked the soldiers to control the closing of the metal plate, and then with a wave of his hand, he ordered the soldiers who filed out from the first truck to unload the large device transported on the last truck. Roar. On the other side, Dr. Banner, who was falling from the sky, suffered intense grievances, grief, and pain, causing him to lose his mind in an instant, with an unnaturally distorted body, a series of bone explosions, and his body continued to expand. The angry beast, the invincible green shadow reappears. However, before the furious Hulk could roar, he heard a crazy roar coming from the dark passage. Then one is also very green, but without his green, also very huge, but without his muscular figure, rushing straight towards him. What's the situation with this shit? Bucky, who was hovering in the air wearing falcon wings, looked down at Hulk and a humanoid monster that was neither as green nor as huge as him, but also very green and muscular. A flaming skull, and it's not a personal guy at all. 3 monsters, with more than soldiers in a pile of rags, flames and gunpowder smoke as the background board, are engaged in a crazy 3-party mash-up, and my heart is full of shit in an instant. Bucky arrived here after Howard urgently mobilized a large amount of resources and found out General Ross's movements. In fact, it is not particularly difficult. After all, General Ross is in the territory of New Mexico, and he only manages a few secret military bases and laboratories here. But after Bucky found it, the expected General Ross and Hulk would fight together, or the situation would be calm. Although General Ross wanted to make a big death, he hadn't really succeeded, and Dr. Banner hadn't turned into Hulk. Didn't show up. Even Bucky made the worst plan, and this place exceeded his expectations. General Ross made a big death, did some experiments, and directly created an abomination, or directly turned himself into a Red Hulk. No bad things happened. But the current situation is simply worse than the worst. That little Hulk, at first glance, was created by General Ross. Although it is not as exaggerated as the hatred, although it is always thrown by the Hulk with 3 punches and 2 kicks, always is the key word. It's an exaggeration for a monster that has never been killed, okay? And the other one, a burning skeleton wearing a leather jacket and leather pants, isn't that horse riding a Ghost Rider? How did you mess in here? Bucky saw it. This is actually not the only battlefield. It is estimated that Hulk and the green-skinned bully, who is 1 size smaller, fought from the bottom base all the way to the top. They also prepared something for General Ross to deal with the 2 people. It was dismantled directly, and the soldiers lay on the ground, but General Ross was not seen. The old boy must have been the first to run away. Then the 2 hit the road and wrecked an RV, and then they fought back around here. But do you need such a coincidence? Randomly destroy the car, and it turns out that there is a Ghost Rider in it? Bucky couldn't help but feel bitter for a while. It's not enough for him to be helpless with a Hulk on his horse, he even jumped out 3 times. You have the ability to pop out an eternal family, and you have the ability to smash down a group of gods. Regardless of the fact that Little Green and Fireskull were beaten violently by the Hulk, Little Green can still beat him a few times. It is estimated that the Ghost Rider really did not make his official appearance. The shotgun strengthened by iron chains and hellfire is always swung by the fist, and it is always hit by the Hulk, but it can always shoot a spark, and then continue to attack. But being able to be hit hard by the Hulk without dying is pretty self-explanatory. At least Bucky can't do that. Bucky saw that Ghost Rider didn't use the eyes of judgment that, gazing into my eyes, apart from being beaten all the time, he might not find any chance. Presumably, normal people can be burned with guilt by the spirit of hell with the fire of hell, but where does Hulk get the guilt? All he has is boundless rage. Or maybe this Ghost Rider was awakened abnormally, not because the contract signed by Johnny Blazer and Mephisto, the King of Hell, came into effect. He hasn't fully awakened and can't use it. But in any case, none of the following 3 can be provoked by Bucky. But he thought about it again. It wasn't that there were some small towns around. There were a large crowd of people eating melons, and if he didn't care about it, many innocent people would die. There is no cure for madness. Let's call farewell. Seeing the 3 monsters fighting each other crazily, and there were obviously more fights, Bucky just ignored it. But he didn't want to just look at it. He glanced around, and suddenly noticed a big hole in the metal plate not far away. Bucky thought for a while, and swooped directly into the hole. When approaching the bottom, use the flying wings as a buffer, land gently, and retract the flying wings into the system. The rancid and bloody smell around him made Bucky frown slightly. It was obvious that there were many dead people here before. He switched the prosthetic eye to thermal imaging mode and observed carefully. There were many traces of Hulk fighting around, and there were big pits everywhere on the metal walls, floors and ceilings. Entering a dark passage, when turning a corner, there are emergency lights lighting up. The prosthetic eye switches to low light mode, and frowns again. He sees a person. A soldier who was ripped apart by the Hulk or another monster. He has no definite location, but is on the ground, on the wall, and on the ceiling. Then all the way deep, there are such people everywhere, including soldiers, staff, and whitecoats. Bucky doesn't even need to take over the camera here, just follow the dead man all the way to find it. Finally, I found a laboratory, which was similar to the laboratory where Hulk was born in the last video, and it was also a large instrument that was smashed in the middle. The 7th subject. Bucky connected to the computer here. Although the monitor was smashed, a dialog box appeared directly in Bucky's prosthetic eye, and the video in the folder with the last date began to play. The subject of the experiment was a thin, dry guy, whose body shape reminded Bucky of the original body before he became a big muscle bully. Looking at this person's face again, isn't it just that smaller monster? Fuck. This old guy Ross is really good at playing. Bucky quickly browsed the video files, as well as other related materials, which recorded the experimental process in detail. This experimental subject was first transformed with the super soldier serum to become a muscle fighter, and then injected the serum repeatedly until it became a big muscle fighter, and finally, it was injected with a special serum. It was some blood samples left by Dr. Banner when he conducted experiments on himself again. General Ross ordered his researchers to mix super combat serum, irradiate with gamma rays, and then inject them into the experimental subjects. But given that Banner, a healthy adult, has turned into an uncontrolled behemoth. The experimental subjects selected by General Ross this time were all deliberately looking for Steve Rogers, the kind of guy who struggled to live when he was a child, and the frontal lobe white matter was removed. Moreover, Banner's blood was not used much. After all, General Ross didn't have much. In Bucky's memory, the guest star of Mr. Stan Lee in the movie drank a drink mixed with a drop of Dr. Banner's blood, only to be poisoned, and Bronski injected several bags of blood before he became disgusted. That's why this experimental body turned into this kind of castrated version of Hulk who is not so green and not so strong, right? What disappointed General Ross, and who sat on wax directly, was that the only successful experimental subject that didn't collapse in the final step and didn't turn into a pool of radioactive mud was still an uncontrollable raging beast after transformation. In the Gobi Desert, on the soil slope, the staggering, panting General Ross, with a greasy old face, seemed to lie on the left and groove on the right. He lost another secret experimental base, which can be said to be in a state of desperation. Although the Hulk matter was settled by him last time, he also consumed a lot of resources and contacts, used a lot of one-time favors, and owed a lot of favors that were difficult to repay. For a long time, he couldn't afford to make such a mess again. He shouldn't be so eager to do new experiments, but he really can't forget the berserk green monster. He just can't help it. He just must bring that power into his control. He must do it, the one who controls the invincible behemoth. What was waiting for him was, of course, something he couldn't think of, or refused to think that way, another failure. Fortunately, he successfully sealed off the experimental base, and the newly created monster was not as strong as the Hulk, so he couldn't get out of the closed underground base for the time being. General Ross cut off his tail decisively to survive, but he had no idea how to deal with that monster. Until the mercenaries he hired with secret funds sent him a message that he had found Hulk's whereabouts. It was not Dr. Banner but Hulk. It happened that Hulk came out at that time, but those people followed him and turned back into Banner. So there was a meeting between the two, and then General Ross decisively cheated Dr. Banner, and because of this, he decisively cheated himself. The sound wave generator he prepared to use against the Hulk, the military's newly developed sound wave generator, is useless. Then he ran far away, and saw a scene that shocked his three views. A flaming skeleton riding on two wheels with flames came back with two monsters and joined the battle group. He believes in God, but he doesn't think God really exists in reality. He believes in supernatural power, but he believes in supernatural power triggered by science, not evil spirits in myths. Believe it or not, Bucky does. However, Bucky is the same. There is nothing he can do about this situation, except to watch the show from a distance. He has searched all the undamaged materials in the laboratory, but he can't find anything other than the experimental records of creating a castrated version of Hulk. There is no way to deal with this situation. In case of an emergency, there are no plans. General Ross really brought his death to the extreme, always trying to control power that he couldn't control at all, and every time he failed, he would make a big mess. After Bucky made a copy of all the experimental data, he completely deleted it, found another laboratory, opened a coded door, and stored Dr. Banner's last blood sample, as well as a small amount of blood and serum, which were refrigerated inside. Fresh serum that had been irradiated with gamma rays was taken out. The blood is directly destroyed. Although Dr. Banner is still alive, at least General Ross will not be allowed to have his blood again, and then go to death. The new serum is first scanned by the system, which is similar to Hulk's blood. Direct use will cause unknown changes. After dismantling, what is obtained is a chaotic rage factor, similar to the Hulk rage factor. Obviously, it is also a degraded castrated version with more side effects. After Bucky prepares it, he will directly disassemble it into materials. This trip is not in vain. Destroying these things is considered to help General Ross clean up the evidence in a disguised form, but keeping these things is also a disaster. And when the work here was over, Bucky summoned the system vehicle version of the Falcon's flying wings and returned to the sky. The battle of the three monsters continues. Not only is it continuing, but it has also been upgraded. To be precise, Hulk's violence has escalated. The endless entanglement between the two Xiaoqiang who couldn't be beaten to death made Hulk more angry and more violent. For a while, press the little green to beat, and for a while, press the small fire to beat. After a while, he hit Xiao Lu with one hand and small fire with the other. But it just couldn't kill him. The flames of the Ghost Rider never go out, and the smaller green monster is also tireless. Although his nose is bruised and his face is swollen and green blood is splashed, he can still continue to be beaten. It's much tougher than a fat green man who was punched by Thanos and autistic by an old farmer who didn't want to mention his name. Moreover, the Ghost Riders seem to have finally exploded under the heavy punches of old punches. Hulk grabbed one of his feet and swung him wildly, next to the machine gun. However, the Ghost Knight directly picked up the half of the broken gun, and with a ghostly roar, the flame on the bone of his hand gradually spread to the broken gun, and the part ignited by the flames suddenly changed. The metal burning with the flames of hell seemed to have life, and gradually became fluid and plastic, gradually turning back into a complete machine gun. The body of the gun glowed bright silver, and lava flowed faintly, followed by densely packed bone patterns, producing sharp spikes and igniting bright yellow and blood-red flames. This is too cool, right? The ferocious yet extremely aesthetic machine gun made Bucky's eyes sparkle in the distance. Ghost Rider has awakened the ability to control metal with hellfire? Choo choo choo. Just when Bucky was thinking about how much money he paid for the skin of such a cool machine gun, Ghost Rider had already let the barrel of the machine gun spew out tongues of fire, and flaming bullets poured crazily on the other two, on a monster. Ow. The flaming bullet actually made Hulk let out a slightly painful roar. After fighting for such a long time, or being beaten for such a long time, Ghost Rider, who couldn't help Hulk at all, finally launched an effective attack. And the other monster had its skin broken, leaving charred marks and broken cracks on his skin. Great. Bucky screamed fiercely. The Ghost Rider was created by Mephisto, the king of hell in mythology, who used the spirit of vengeance and hellfire to infuse the human body through the devil's contract. His flame damage is magical, and Hulk cannot be completely immune. But it wouldn't hurt him too much. After Hulk was beaten, he immediately rushed over in a rage against the pain. Boom. However, Ghost Rider grabbed a smoke bomb from the corpse of the soldier next to him, filled it with hellfire and threw it directly. It hit Hulk, and a strong flame erupted instantly, and Hulk was directly blasted away. Then do the same, and blow another monster away. It seems that the key is the hellfire controlled by the Ghost Rider. Even if it is poured into a stone, it should have the same effect. Bucky looked at the flaming skull laughing up to the sky, and to the other two monsters that were blown away, putting up his middle finger. He couldn't help but secretly marvel. What the hell? Choo choo choo. Bucky, who was hovering in the sky watching the excitement, suddenly accelerated, directly accelerating to the limit of the flying wings, and only then dodged the flaming bullets that were strafing over. The three monsters have known about Bucky's existence for a long time, but they just haven't had time to pay attention to it. But now Ghost Rider has the time and means to deal with it. Asterisk. I have provoked someone. Bucky watched the monster fight and hummed a song, and suddenly he was slapped in the face and shot wildly. He had to soar the Falcon aircraft to extreme speed, and kept circling to avoid the line of fire chasing him. Hulk and another monster were blown away by Ghost Rider, and the two monsters fought each other passionately. The Ghost Rider set his sights on Bucky, screaming continuously, and fired wildly with the machine gun shaped by hellfire. The flaming bullets formed a line, centered on Ghost Rider, and revolved around Bucky. The eyes intertwined for an instant, and Bucky looked at the vortex of flames in the skull's eye sockets. For an instant, there was a sense of trance, as if he saw countless burning evil spirits roaring, and there seemed to be countless evils contained there. And still hungry for more sin. In an instant, it seemed that the original body's memories of those killings were about to be aroused, and Bucky felt a strong sense of guilt that was about to burst out. As we all know, men are completely irresistible to the impulsive impulse that is about to burst forth. But fortunately, the source of that impulse had nothing to do with Bucky. How many people the Winter Soldier has killed, how many innocent people's blood has been stained on his hands, how many crimes he has carried on his body, it has nothing to do with him as a time traveler. He is not Shuren Joe. He crossed over to occupy this body, but he was avenging those creditors, right? Why should he feel guilty? But the kind of eyes that penetrate the soul, the examination that hits the soul. It made Bucky furious in an instant, and I'm guilty of you. The strong anger instantly suppressed that impulse. Boom. You want me to squirt, right? You try this, I sprayed. Bucky opened his right forearm, stretched out a black and hard missile, drew an arc in the air, and instantly hit the screaming flaming skull. Just hit him on the ground. It's sizzling. This is not over yet. Bucky followed to lock on the Ghost Rider, electromagnetic short circuit, joint infection, sonic shock, and quickly cracked 3 consecutive skills. I have to say that Bucky's system is very fraudulent, not only causing the Ghost Rider to erupt with electric arcs, but also making him twitch like an electric shock. It even made him covered in green mist, made him retch with his stomach clutched like a skeleton, and screamed with his head in his hands. Since it works, let's do it again. Bucky then had another attack of cyberpsychosis, and took out the anti-material high-explosive sniper rifle, 05, from the system space, and shot the Ghost Rider lying on the ground. Boom. Boom. Then the missile launcher on the right arm was reloaded, and 2 explosions happened in succession, sending Ghost Rider far away. Go eat shit, you idiot. The uncle won't play with you anymore. Bucky ran decisively first, and then turned his head and said harsh words. Obviously, although Bucky's skills are much stronger than the first Hulk, it is still difficult to cause any real damage to monsters like Hulk or Ghost Rider, that is, to disgust them a few times. Exiting bad breath, it's almost enough, let's accept it when you see it. Bucky hovered in the air, dodging the Ghost Rider, who was really fine, and chasing the fire from the flying wings. He thought that there would be another wave to completely open the distance. But I saw Ghost Rider suddenly dancing like a convulsion. The machine gun in his hand swung wildly, and the flaming bullets shot everywhere. This is cyberpsychosis in effect. Bucky couldn't help slowing down his flight speed, changing from evacuation to hovering. Then I saw Ghost Rider throwing away the machine gun. The machine gun was out of his control, the hellfire dissipated, and turned back into a broken gun again. But the key point is that the Ghost Rider started to hug his head and scream. His body kept struggling, punching himself for a while, and giving himself a mouth for a while. Then something even weirder happened. Ghost Rider's ghostly roar gradually turned into a roar. It even made a sound that could barely be heard from a human being. And his body is also gradually changing. The flames are gradually shrinking and dimming, and thick black smoke is emitting from his body, until the flames are extinguished, turning into a charred skeleton emitting black smoke. Then the skeleton gradually grew blood and flesh, and gradually recovered into a frightening human figure with the skin peeled off, and then the skin grew back, turning into a 27-year-old young man. Then he rolled his eyes and grabbed the ground with his face in a daze, and then there was no movement. Bucky stared directly at the circle, thinking that this is not the case. Am I so good? The effect is so good. But then I thought about it. Although Ghost Rider is the vengeful spirit infused with hellfire, he is still sealed in Johnny Blazer's body, but he can be like the Hulk, and he can completely suppress it when he appears the soul of Johnny Blazer. But Bucky's skills, no matter whether the target is one soul or two, that is, Johnny Blazer and the vengeful spirit, all become cyber-psychopaths. It's also like the case of Haikong possessing Botu. These two are the closest existences, and the two directly fucked in the same body. And for some reason, Johnny Blazer's soul has the upper hand. It may be the appearance of the Ghost Rider, which is not a normal procedure. He didn't come out just because he wanted to. The host's consciousness is clear, and he can suppress the consciousness of the spirit of revenge. Anyway, it was Ghost Rider who turned back into a human being and lay motionless on the ground. I seem to be particularly lethal to this type of possession. Bucky looked at the guy lying motionless on the ground, and couldn't help pinching his chin. A Black Sky possessed and a Ghost Knight were overthrown by his cyberpsychosis. This should explain the problem very well. This skill is for this kind of possessed, but it does not completely eliminate the original soul. Types of multiple personality disorders, special restraint. Is that Hulk? Hulk can wait. Bucky looked at the other side. Hulk was still slamming another monster, and that monster seemed to explode crazily, a little more violently than before, and while being violently punched by Hulk, he could also punch Hulk a few times. Let them hit it first, it will take a while for the skill to cool down. Bucky turned his head again to look at the young man that Ghost Rider had turned back into. He was still lying on the ground quietly, not moving at all. Bucky intends to give him another electromagnetic short circuit to try him. But this guy is similar to Dr. Banner. Don't hit him again and get hooked up by Ghost Rider. As for the system description, there is no information on defeating Ghost Rider. Because the spirit of vengeance was created by Mephisto, the Lord of Hell, Bucky just took a trick to make him retract into a human body, so it must not be considered defeatable. Forget it, don't go there, and there is nothing to lick. Bucky will not lean over, and then be pretended to be dead and take the opportunity to sneak attack or something, or continue to fly. Watch the Hulk side. Anyway. The system vehicle version of the flying wing. The fuel can be replenished at any time, it is just some common components. But at this time, Bucky was in a trance without warning. Instant loss of mind. Suddenly, an indescribable picture appeared in my mind. A world full of sulfur and lava, thick smoke, haunted by evil spirits, and littered with corpses. On the throne made of black stones, white bones, sinful blood, and innocent souls, a majestic, deep, and extremely evil existence, shrouded in thick fog, seemed to penetrate endless time and space, staring directly at Bucky for a split second. It was at this very moment that Bucky felt as if the burning sky and earth, and the sinful world were all pressing on him, making him unable to breathe, unable to think, and his soul was suppressed. There seems to be a system sound in my ear, but I can't distinguish it, only the extreme darkness, distortion, rage, chaos, evil, and countless messy thoughts. It was pitch black. A moment of nothingness. It's not that you can't think, it's that you have nothing at all. Then, there was a flash of red and blue neon color blocks in the darkness, and a progress bar of "System restarting" appeared. I don't know how long it has passed, but Bucky has nothing but this progress bar. Until the progress bar was full, Bucky regained his vision and consciousness. Boom. Following a burst of strong impact and pain, Bucky woke up completely. His falcon wing has retracted, and he free falls to the ground. And this is not over yet. A burst of flames hits the face. Johnny Blazer, who was lying on the ground, suddenly raised his head, opened his mouth wide, and spewed out a mouthful of flames from hell. Young people don't talk about martial arts, and attacked me, a 70-year-old popsicle. Caught off guard, Bucky had no time to dodge, and Johnny Blazer's rolling eyes had locked onto him. Boo. He can only resist with his left arm. Fortunately, the flame that erupted from Johnny Blazer's mouth was still a very thin straight line, blocked by Bucky's palm. In Bucky's unbearable pain, the skin of his prosthetic body was burned instantly, and then burned to the metal prosthetic limb. The metal prosthesis burned red instantly, causing Bucky's chest to smoke, and he became half-cooked in an instant. Fortunately, Johnny Blazer quickly finished his mouthful of flames, rolled his eyes and closed his eyes, and hit his head on the ground without any movement. System. Absorb the invading alien energy. Disassemble the gorilla arm. Bucky endured the severe pain in his left chest, and quickly gave himself a therapeutic injection, and then let the system disassemble and burn red, and it really became the left arm of the unicorn arm. Hellfire is the mysterious energy on the magic side, but as long as it is energy, the system should be able to absorb it. The system is very fraudulent, otherwise it would not be able to force restart in the situation just now, thus saving Bucky. Who is coveting the possessions of the great Lord of Hell? Small and lowly worms, accept the punishment of the great master, his humble servant. I want to draw out your soul and bring it to hell, where you will endure the endless fire of hellburn. But Bucky hadn't waited for the system to give the prompt of dismantling before his mind buzzed again. It's like having a loudspeaker for a square dance, roaring at the maximum volume in your ears. An angry voice roared, impacting Bucky's consciousness, causing him a splitting headache. Bucky couldn't help grinning. This is the servant who beat the dog and came to the master's house. He provoked the spirit of vengeance and let Mephisto, the Lord of Hell, stare at him. That look was probably stared at by the Lord of Hell himself. He is a timid and humble traverser. What can he do if he is on a horse? Fortunately, it seems that it is difficult for a high-dimensional existence like the Lord of Hell to project power into the main material world. That person just gave Bucky a look, and then saw that it had no effect, and then used Johnny Blazer as a channel. Made a little move. Sent an evil spirit, presumably the servant's servant's servant, to capture Bucky's soul. This is really a little trick. Otherwise, with the mighty force who almost stared at Bucky to death just now, with a flick of his finger, Bucky can look forward to being able to time travel again. I hope that this time I can travel to become Bucky the Clown and stay away from the dangerous world of Marvel. But, seeing that it's just an evil spirit invading his body was just, Bucky didn't panic anymore. Because he is too familiar with this situation. Thanks to his previous experience of fighting against the Black Sky, he has sufficient experience in this situation. And now Bucky has upper, middle and lower 3 dandians, 3, endurance conversion chi, and his calm attribute has skyrocketed to 19 points, unbearable pain. It's sizzling. The first is to give yourself an electromagnetic short circuit. Ah. What kind of power is this? Sure enough, it caused a scream in my mind. System. Disassemble the intruding unknown existence. System information. Unknown energy and matter detected. Dismantling. What is this? No. As expected, a shocked and even more miserable cry came from my mind. My lord. Show me a little mercy for your humble and loyal servant. Help me. If you beat the dog again, the owner of the dog will. Fortunately, Bucky's fearful stare, or Johnny Blazer's fire-breathing, did not appear. This seemed to be the last resort used by that terrifying existence against Bucky, and after that, there was nothing to say. Even if Bucky uses the system to absorb the fire of hell and confines it to the disassembled unicorn arm, even if Bucky disassembles that humble servant, bit by bit, until his roars and wailing become smaller and smaller, it ended abruptly. There is no movement at all. Bucky's red-burned unicorn arm was also disassembled, leaving only the scorched edges, but Bucky pulled the blood strips with needles and needles, so he didn't burn to death directly. The interface is fully cooked. Asterisk. I want to say I'm hungry, isn't it a little perverted? Bucky smelled the smell of burnt barbecue, let out a miserable laugh, sat down on the ground, and followed the big characters. Oh, big, can't be done, without a unicorn arm. He could only lie on the ground, sprawled on the ground, his face full of disasters. A fluke for the rest of my life. Next time, let alone watching a movie, he would hide away when he knew there was such a fight between monsters and monsters. Bucky, who had escaped a catastrophe, looked at his miserable state, but still had fun in the bitterness, and hurriedly dispelled the negative emotions in his heart, because the roaring, fighting, and even the ground shook slightly from time to time. That all told him that this matter is not over yet. Only one of the 3 monsters lay down, and there are still 2 who are passionately fighting each other. Even if from the bottom of my heart I want to put down the pick, then I can't just put down the pick in place. Moreover, after being in such a miserable state, it's all for this sake. Bucky has to see how this matter will end, otherwise, how can he be reconciled? Bucky gritted his teeth, summoned the falcon's flying wings again, soared into the sky, and flew towards the place where the 2 monsters were fighting. The battle between Hulk and his little brother was more intense than Bucky expected. It's a fight, not a one-sided beating. Hulk has always been fierce, but now, another monster who has been beaten before has also risen. After being beaten violently by the Hulk and scarred all over by the Ghost Rider, this guy suddenly exploded. He looked bigger than before, greener, and more powerful, faster and fiercer. Although Hulk's fists and kicks, he has suffered a lot, but now he is not flying with one kick, but can hold it, and he can return his hand after a few blows. This is also a breakthrough? Do you have a system where you get stronger when you get hit? The left arm has been disassembled, and now there is a scorched black scar on the left chest that looks like it has been dug out. The miserable Bucky, watching the 2 monsters fight, can't help but sigh. It's really hard to compare people. Shop around, the goods have to be thrown away. Look at all these monsters. It's too embarrassing for him as a time traveler. He would be ashamed to tell the time travel circle. Only, Bucky also noticed that the erupting monster was fierce, but there was one thing: the scars on his body showed no signs of healing. Not only did he not heal, but he was beaten even worse by Hulk. He was scratched and scorched by the hellfire bullets used by the Ghost Knight, and was beaten to pieces by the Hulk, and there were more and more bruises on his body. Although these are all skin traumas, they are far from the level of broken bones and tendons, so the problem is not big. But the 2 monsters fought passionately for a while. Hulk hit the opponent's face with an uppercut, and even sent a piece of flesh flying off his face, revealing his pale cheekbones. After a few punches, the skin on his body also began to peel off. Although the monster was still fierce, it was even fiercer and more violent. This made Bucky feel very problematic. Could it be that this guy is at the end of his strength? The limit burst is also the limit of squeezing the body, overdrawing the vitality. This is touching the limit and going to collapse? And soon, Bucky believed in his guess even more. Because he saw that Hulk punched the monster with green blood, and there were pieces of things mixed in, and his figure was like a candle that was beginning to melt. The outermost layer of flesh looked a little soft, fell down. Although he was still fighting passionately with Hulk, his strength finally exploded to the extreme, peaked and declined, and began to decline. The 2 monsters were still dying, and Bucky, who was the only one who noticed this, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. That's all for Hulk, this degraded and castrated version of the monster. If he gets stronger as he fights, breaks through in front of the battle, and then evolves into hatred, and kills Hulk, where will he put his face? Finally, the roar of the monster gradually became lower and out of tune. Then he, who couldn't keep up with Hulk's rhythm, was kicked away by the big green feet. This kick was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. It didn't matter that the monster flew, it fell hard to the ground, but when I thought about it again, it staggered and sat on the ground again. Then I heard him screaming. Not only the outer layer of flesh, but the whole body began to collapse like a melting candle. It's now. Bucky, who was hovering in the air, suddenly turned into a hovering state. His eyes flashed coldly, and in his only remaining hand, a super sniper rifle with a full sense of technology reappeared. Zilla. Boom. An electric arc erupted suddenly on the monster, and then exploded. 3 consecutive skills, sniper rifles, arm missiles, except for one cyberpsychosis. Bucky used all his attack methods to call on that monster. Roar. Hulk, who was rushing over, was instantly blocked by the explosion, and couldn't help but raised his head and roared angrily at Bucky. Hulk knows him. Meet this nasty little flying bug. Call. Hulk picked up a piece of gravel next to him and threw it at Bucky. Although the speed of the crushed stone was comparable to that of a cannonball, it was a pity that the forward swing was too obvious, and only Bucky's circling dodge and a middle finger were exchanged. Roar, and at this time, in the flames of the explosion, a monster with a faint green flame all over its body and a layer of rotten flesh barely hanging out crawled out, making indescribable screams. Roaring voice, still persistently crawling towards Hulk. Even Hulk didn't rush forward when he saw this, but let out a nasal sound of disdain. Zilla. Boom. Hulk stopped fighting, but Bucky saw that the coward couldn't hold fire, and hit him with another set of combos. Roar. This also annoyed Hulk, who had finally calmed down. He squatted hard, jumped suddenly, and rushed towards Bucky like a cannonball. However, this is where Hulk is not as good as Thor and Dachow next door. Although he can jump tens of meters high, he can't fly or he can't fly. More relaxed. He warmly gave Hulk a middle finger, and Bucky felt better, and the cyber psychosis he kept was thrown to the fat green man without a sound. Bucky wants to see how cyber psychosis works on the Hulk. However, it takes a few seconds for this skill to take effect. Hulk jumped to nothing, fell freely, and jumped again without giving up. After a while, another monster finally turned into a skeleton in a puddle of mud. And Hulk, who couldn't hit Bucky even when he jumped up, went to the pile of broken equipment that General Ross had dismantled before, and wanted to attack from a distance, but suddenly stopped. Then without warning, he punched himself in the nose suddenly. Stop. No. Give me back your body, weak Banner, unworthy body, Hulks. You robber. Weak chicken. I hate you. Hulk hates Banner the weakling. Hulk made two voices, slapping himself, hitting his own head, and fighting with himself. Come on. Fuck him. Well done, Bruce. You can do it. Seeing this, someone regained his spirits and cheered Dr. Banner up in the air. Dr. Banner really lived up to Bucky's high expectations. Hulk thumped himself, and suddenly covered his head and yelled. Half of his head turned back into Bruce Banner. Although it changed back immediately, it shrank again following the shoulders. Struggling like this, Hulk's body gradually returned to Dr. Banner's control. From a green super muscular bully to a thin normal person. Damn it. Monster. Thief. Robber. Give me back my life. Get out of me. It's just that the effect of the cyber psychosis skill seems to be too good. Dr. Banner, who has transformed back, is still cursing and slapping himself. Then smoke and cry. The effect won't be too good, and it will be drawn back to Hulk, right? Bucky, who wanted to go down to have a look, flew back quickly when he saw this. He couldn't help laughing bitterly. He finally had a skill to restrain the Hulk, but because it was too good, the result wasn't that good. By the way, what's going on here? Things are just like what Murphy's Law describes. When you don't want a situation to happen, it just happens. After Dr. Banner changed back, he still acted like a lunatic during the effective time of Bucky's quick cracking skill, cyber psychosis, beating and scolding himself constantly, and constantly venting that he has become a hero since he became How K has been suppressing grief and indignation. Then the anger builds up to the limit, unable to contain my anger, losing my mind and losing control of my body. Back to Hulk again. This made Bucky see it, and his eyes went black with anger. It was not easy for him to acquire such a skill to restrain the Hulk, and he just thought that he finally didn't have to do anything about this green fat man anymore. Just give him this one, but because the effect of the skill is too good, the effect is not good at all in the end. One can imagine how damn he feels in his heart. However, Bucky can't stop this skill as soon as he wants, he has to wait for time to run out. So isn't this just another skill that can only disgust Hulk? Bucky couldn't help but feel discouraged for a while. But now, let's focus on Hulk. I have enough hatred. This green fat man must find me immediately. However, Hulk's situation was once again beyond Bucky's expectations. Weak chicken Banner. Shut up. I hate you. Hulk hates Banner the weakling. Hulk ignored Bucky and hit him again. Bucky's cautious eyes turned into beady eyes. Looking at the system panel, the effect of cyberpsychosis skills has long since passed, and the CD has been transferred. Why is this guy still fighting? The effect is so good that the effect is not so good, but the effect is actually quite good? The situation of Hulk and Dr. Banner is actually different from the situation of the Black Sky-possessed Botu and the Ghost Rider. Neither of these two are outsiders, they are the real masters of this body, and they are two personalities born from the same body. Neither of these two has an absolute advantage. Unlike a Black Sky and a Blogger, a Vengeful Spirit and a Johnny Blazer, Hulk's spiritual will is not necessarily much stronger than Banner. It's just that Hulk represents the most intense emotion, anger, and when angry, the two personalities of the same body and soul automatically switch to Hulk. But now Banner is also stimulated, he is also very angry, he is cyber-mentally ill. Well, although the effect of cyberpsychosis is gone, he is still very angry. For the first time, he maintained the existence of personality consciousness in extreme anger, and was angry with Hulk. He took advantage of his previous PK with Hulk, and because this was the first time in his life, he vented all the anger he had accumulated for a long time on Hulk, maintained his anger, and continued to compete with Hulk for control of his body. And when Dr. Banner also had anger, and it was no longer unique to Hulk, the new personality consciousness, has not been out for a long time. He can't beat Dr. Banner, who has always maintained his personality status of consciousness. Ever since, in the battle between the two personalities, Dr. Banner gradually gained the advantage, and Hulk began to change back again. Then, in constant struggle, he turned back into Dr. Banner again. Bucky doesn't know if this is a special case, or if it will continue to be the case in the future, but Dr. Banner has undoubtedly succeeded in doing it this time. Dr. Banner. Of course, with the lessons learned from Ghost Rider, Bucky hovered in the air for a while, until he saw Dr. Banner slumped on the ground, bowed his head and was speechless, then carefully landed and retracted the falcon wings. Then stay away and raise your voice to greet each other. It's you, Johnny, isn't it? Long time no see. Why are you like this? Dr. Banner raised his head and changed back to the melancholy scholarly young man. He recognized Bucky, but was taken aback by his miserable appearance. Remember that monster you fought with Hulk before? He was burned. God. What kind of monster is that? How? Dr. Banner's personality was suppressed when Hulk appeared, but not sealed. He knew Hulk's experience. So recalling the flame skull, he, who believes in science, suddenly felt a strong impact on his three views. I don't know too well, but fortunately, it's temporarily resolved. Let's go and see him. Look at him. Don't worry, in fact, his situation is somewhat similar to yours, and he has also turned back into a human being. I don't think we are alike. I'm science. Come on, you're black technology. Bucky didn't flirt with Dr. Banner, he just motioned him to follow. When he saw the monster not far away that had turned into a skeleton and a lump of slightly green fluorescent mud, Dr. Banner frowned again. I said, why does General Ross insist on asking me to help him? It turns out that he actually created this kind of monster again. Why didn't he accept the lesson? He couldn't understand why the cheap father-in-law was so obsessed with this uncontrollable power, causing a lot of casualties to the people around him and innocent people time and time again. Because who would see such invincible power as the Hulk and wouldn't want to keep it for himself? Anyway, if Bucky can become the Hulk, as long as he is not so green and can maintain his sanity like Hulk and the Hulks in the K-Ben special team, he will also be tempted. By the way, how did you get here? What happened to Columbia? Dr. Banner explained a few words to Bucky with some embarrassment, and he was a little aggrieved and ashamed to see people. It was his temper that kept Hulk out of his way. Don't take it too seriously, you can't help yourself. Bucky also comforted him a few words, and the two walked to the position where Johnny Blazer was lying on his stomach. Bucky had heard the faint snoring for a long time, so he went over boldly and kicked the guy who burned his unicorn arm. Turned over, making him fall asleep on his back. Can we, or should we wake him up? Dr. Banner carefully and curiously observed Johnny Blazer, as if he wanted to reach out and poke him. Let's go. Wait for me to call someone directly. Bucky took out his mobile phone, and prepared to call the rapid processing team of S.H.I.E.L.D. He also wanted to talk to Howard, who was still in the Trikerv wing building, about the situation here, and asked him to appease the increasingly irritable Betty Ross. However, at this moment, Bucky suddenly stopped pressing the button and stared straight ahead. Suddenly sparks burst out there, and then connected into an arc, followed by a circle, and finally the scene in the circle suddenly changed. This unscientific. There is no magic in this world. This is hallucination. It's technology. You can't fool me. Dr. Banner stared blankly at a young fat man with a short hair and a hairy head who came out of a fire circle bursting with sparks, and he cried out in his heart. Sir Newton, Sir Leibniz, Ohm, Tesla, Einstein. All the gods of science, don't lie in the coffin, come out and have a look. Some people wantonly provoke science here. Dr. Banner's stare was set aside. Let's start with Bucky's. Stunned. Bucky was also very shocked. From the moment the sparks appeared, he was in a daze, and then he had the urge to summon the steel suit to run away. But after thinking about it, this is the most famous magic organization in the MCU. The magician of the Karmatage Priory, who opened a magic portal. People on Mount Everest just go as they say, even if the steel suit can fly at a speed of Mach 1.5, and where can I go? Moreover, there is also a mirror space, where the dimensions can be controlled arbitrarily, and the concepts of up, down, left, and right can be transformed with just a few gestures. If he was targeted by someone, treated as if he wanted to escape, and then cut into two pieces by someone opening a portal, he would already lose an arm. Bucky could only take a deep breath, ready to see who it was and for whom it was coming. And sure enough, Bucky looked at the fat young man who came out of the portal with his hands behind his back. He just glanced at him and Dr. Banner, and then focused on Johnny Blazer lying on the ground. Body. Then he stretched his hands and 5 fingers apart, and bright lines suddenly lit up on the palms of both palms, each forming a mysterious magic circle, and then pressed down, pressing on Johnny Blazer's chest and abdomen. After the magic circle submerged into his body, there was no such thing as the dissipation of black energy that Bucky imagined, or howling ghosts and gods, or even ignited the fire of hell. But there was no movement at all. "Excuse me, what are you doing?" "No, can I ask who you were first?" It was Dr. Banner who was asking the question, and Bucky was worried that a bald-headed woman dressed as a boss would suddenly pop up and point at him and call him a monster. The young fat man looked at Dr. Banner, then at Bucky, and said in a deep voice, "I am the king, from the Priory, here to investigate the supernatural phenomena here." Bucky's heart moved. It really was him, the librarian Fatty Wong. "What kind of organization is the Priory? What kind of ability do you have?" "The Priory is an organization that does not interfere with the real society and only appears when supernatural powers appear. Although the two are superpowers, we still have no connection, so you don't need to care about it." Fatty Wong is a bit cold, obviously unwilling to communicate more. "How could you not care about it? Hey, let's go, I haven't finished talking yet." Dr. Banner still wanted to ask, but Fatty Wong stretched out his left hand, drew a circle with his right hand, and opened the portal again, intending to dodge directly. After all, he is also one of the top 3 physics geniuses in the world. How could he even create a Hulk? Isn't that taking him seriously? Will it be magical? Magic is just science that hasn't been cracked yet. But Bucky wanted Fatty Wong to leave as soon as possible. Although he didn't know why he showed his face, he was a little curious, well, still very curious, but he could still restrain it. Unexpectedly, Fatty Wong suddenly turned his head, frowned and looked at Bucky. "There is something wrong with your breath. It seems that you are not just injured by the flames?" Hiss. Fatty Wang's eyes are very vicious, so it can be seen that he has been possessed by an evil spirit. Bucky also said directly, "I don't know too well. I don't know anything about the specific situation, but I was indeed hurt like this by him. If possible, can you come with me and tell me what happened?" "Sure." Bucky looked careless, and nodded in agreement without thinking about it. But he actually remembered the gaze of the terrifying existence that traveled through time and space before, thinking that it would be better to hide in that big guy's territory. And in case that horrible existence, what other backhands did he not discover? It is better to let professional help to look at it. As for his identity as a time traveler, he couldn't hide anyway. If the big guy wanted to show up, he would have already appeared shaking a sandalwood fan. Bucky nodded in comparison to Fatty Wong, who made a gesture of invitation, and walked through the magic portal in a few steps, and came to a 19th century Western-style corridor. "Hey, Johnny, can I go? Can you take me?" When Dr. Banner saw that Bucky left without saying a word, he immediately felt left out, and he really couldn't help his curiosity. After he couldn't see the magic with his own eyes, he just let it go. "It's not convenient for you, please do it yourself." Fatty Wong maintained a cold attitude towards Dr. Banner, just like in Bucky's memory. Kamatage was rejected by the down-and-out Stephen Strange. "Why? I won't talk nonsense." Dr. Banner refused to give up, and chased behind Fatty Wong, who had just left after speaking, trying to reach out and pat him on the shoulder. Fatty Wong turned around suddenly, as if he had eyes in the back of his head, and slapped Dr. Banner on the forehead. His movements were not very fast, but Bucky just watched. No one could beat Hulk to death anyway. And Bucky couldn't see any way to do it. He just saw Dr. Banner being slapped, and suddenly poked there without moving, his eyes dazed with confusion. Fatty Wong saw that Bucky came out of the portal again, and explained a few words. "I just told your friend not to ask any more questions, he's fine. He just gets confused for a while, and he won't think about it again. Actually, we don't know each other very well, it's purely a work relationship, but I can't just tell him he's still here. Wait for me to make a call. Your trick is quite interesting. What is it, ecstasy palm? Can you teach it to the outside world? Please don't tell other people about my existence." Fatty Wong didn't express any surprise at Bucky speaking Chinese, but just shook his head, telling Bucky to hurry up if he wanted to make a call. "It's really mysterious enough. Hey, Howard, it's me, this way." Even if it's a long story short, from seeing 3 monsters fighting, to discovering the secret of General Ross, to meeting the Ghost Rider. And finally Fatty Wong appeared. Bucky, who is standing with the big guy, naturally hides this paragraph, but there are too many things to explain. Fatty Wong had to close the portal first and wait for Bucky to finish speaking. "I've been waiting for a long time, shall we go? Please. Doesn't this person need to bring it?" "Need not. Fatty Wong opened the portal again, regardless of Dr. Banner or Johnny Blazer. This time when the portal was opened, it was no longer a corridor, but an antique Chinese-style room, a bookshelf covering one wall, filled with scrolls, and a desk in front of the bookshelf, but there was a typewriter on it. Sure enough, it has always been advancing with the times. Please sit down. Let's make a long story short. Our monastery has always assumed the responsibility of protecting the earth and preventing the existence of alien dimensions, and the person you came into contact with before is exactly like this, so I need to conduct an inspection on you. Check have you been attacked by the existence of different dimensions. I hope you can cooperate.